Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host Dylan Musk, and I have with me the Clown Prince of Podcast. This is your second cast back, technically on Sidequest, but your first main one where it's just me and you talking about games. So I'm excited to have you back. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Did I just drop out?
I think that's me. Give me 1 sec.
Cool.
Give me one
No,
sec.
go ahead, yeah.
I forgot to plug the Ethernet cable in.
Oh, that's fine because it was weird. I dropped out instead of you. I saw you still moving around, and then I.
Okay,
dropped
maybe I don't know. Either way,
So
we're
we'll
good
see.
to go now.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah, I'll just start over. Yeah, and I'd say I'm excited to talk about today's. I am excited to talk about today's topics, but they're like depressing topics to talk about. Luckily, just first world depressing, right? But it's not like I think there's a juicy discussion to have there. But I don't like that we're discussing because all the news we talk about later is just bad news. So it's nothing. Nothing great, but I'm excited to be back on doing a solo one with you. So,
Yeah. We today's episode is really just gonna be two things. So one is talking about WB Games and just the status of them as like a publisher. I guess you could say there's been a lot of news around that, and that's the depressing news that you're talking about there. And then just some of the games we've been playing, which is in large part just what you've been playing over your kind of pat leaf here over the last few months. And then I have one game that I'm very excited to share with you. But why don't you take it away first? What have you been playing over these last few months?
yeah, so I'll start with the juiciest one. So played Alan Wake, completely done and beat. So I have this new kind of method I want because we talk about this all the time, Backloggd, and then we talk about on Sidequest. Like there's so many games that I haven't finished or want to play, and I get in that cycle of new game comes out, and then I buy that, and then some goes back. I really feel like this year I'm only going to be buying Death Stranding, GTA, and WWE, and that's
Okay.
it. Maybe Ghost. Ghost. I need to see more Ghost. If they have the Legend mode, the multiplayer, like day one, then I'm in there right away. Because I'm like, we
Okay.
talked about that while I was off. Like that's like want to be dropping with the boys. But because I think I was like you, where that first trailer, I was a little underwhelmed. But it's one just because I want to. I don't know how much time I got for all the newer games, so I want to focus on like Death Stranding, DHA, those ones that are going to be very long. But two, it's just there's just so many games that are now like with Alan Wake, I got for $10, and it's like these are games I actively really want to play, but I'm like, it's like oh something's coming out, so I go and drop like $100 on it and still play it and like it, but it's like I could buy that game maybe 6 months from now, whenever, and it'd be like a little bit less. There's still games, and I'm sure even when we get to summer, there's gonna be games that get announced that's like, okay, I gotta buy that one. Like we don't know, even Nintendo Direct, like when the Switch 2 comes out,
Yeah.
like Metroid, that would be one like, okay, I gotta buy that. But that's just like on the dock where it's like, okay, there's some that I want to justify. These are the big ones I know I love, and then there's just so many games that like just even stuff like I'm starting to make a list, but like Resident Evil 8, which I know you played ages ago, but it's like I really liked 7, and most people say like 8's like a bit of a step down, but it's still like I want to play it, and I see it on the store again for like $10 or whatnot. So I got, but
And they have, I think, 2 and 3 remake on Game Pass currently.
Yes.
So those are some
Yeah.
other good ones to easily jump into.
And though it's weird, I think I might own one of those already. Like I think I bought on a sale. And
I think
just,
there
like,
was one of them on like a PS Plus or
yeah,
something like that.
and they're just sitting there. It's stuff like I don't know ever play it, but like one day I bought like Watch Dogs 2 because it was like on like a $10
Yeah.
sale, and I've never touched it. So that's where like I want. So my new method is I am doing either finishing a game and then a backlogged game. So right now I finished
Nice.
Alan Wake, and then I'm gonna do. We'll talk about it next. I'm gonna finish Indie or finish what I feel like. Okay, I've satisfied. I played the main campaign and whatnot, and a little bit more. But that's my idea. Is there's a few games like Hogwarts Legacy I've never beaten, and I still liked it. It's like, okay, I want to go back and fully beat that. So that's my switch off is game I'm 50-75% not done or done hopefully, and then on to a new game. And then my trajectory right now is doing Alan Wake 1, 2 is going to be next, and then I'm going to do Control. I want to do the whole remedy spear and stuff like that. And yeah, it worked out really well because for what was it for boxing or no for Black Friday? Alan Wake was on for like $10, and then Alan Wake 2 was on a sale, but it was still like $44. I was like, oh, like I feel like it could drop more, so we'll see. And then I waited for Boxing Day. Alan Wake 1 was not on sale, but then Alan Wake 2 was on sale for like $25. So I played it
Oh,
completely
damn.
right.
Great deal.
But then I played it a little bit wrong where there was something where like if you bought Alan Wake 2 on a sale, you got Alan Wake 1 for free. So I missed out on that one. But I was pretty happy.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I spent about $30. So yeah, I played Alan Wake. That's a game that even with 2, like you and many other people that just know what I like, I was always like, you got to play this. And that's why that was at the top of the list, just because that's when I keep everyone will say like, oh, that's a Travis game, and it completely was. I absolutely loved it. There's some things that like, yeah, I played the remastered, to be clear. It's like there's some
Okay.
things like are like a little bit dated, but like on an enjoyment level, like that for me is like a 10 out of 10. A technical level maybe not, but I enjoyed the whole way through. And my new method for playing games is for new games is if it's a month, if we got 4 weeks, there's one night a week I play, the game, and then last week, each night I just play it and just go, because that's the thing I found my method of kind of all play and then come back to it eventually. Then I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I've forgotten some stuff. So it's like when I've picked a new game or like a game, I just want to beat it as fast as possible and then maybe some time in between the next one. And that's what I did on one of my last weeks. It was just like 2 weeks of like 6 days in a row of just Alan Wake, and I absolutely
Hell yeah.
loved. I didn't know this. How did the game? Because it's in chapters or episodes, whatever. Did the game release like that back in the day? Because I never played it at all. Even back then, people were like, "Oh, it's a trash game." But like, did it all release at one? And was that just a storytelling way, or did they release it in 6 chunks? Do you know?
They released it all at once. I don't. Is there a DLC that you know
There
of?
is. There's 2 chapters which I gotta play, but I've heard
Okay,
that, like,
so I
it's,
don't think I've. Sorry, do you mean with Alan Wake 2 or 1 for the DLC?
one story. I've not.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
not
So
come
I
to
don't
it.
know if I ever actually played that stuff because I think I played Alan Wake at launch,
'Kay.
and I never gone back to it. So I couldn't tell you exactly, but I know what they did do. And one of the things that got me really hyped on it is like they had like a YouTube series leading up to the release of the first game. This was maybe like
remember
half
that,
an hour's worth of content. That was like live action stuff, and it kind of led up to the events of the game. And then obviously the game was like all at once. And then yeah, I actually don't know what's going on with the DLC there because I never checked that stuff out. And I don't really remember how the game was chopped up in terms of chapters and stuff. But yeah, Alan Wake 2 is like very much like chapter 1, chapter, and like
Okay.
very. It feels like a TV series, right, in the way it's written.
With 2,
so yeah,
how
I don't
many-
have an exact memory on.
I was gonna say
one.
with 2, did you have like? Obviously, they'd probably be different, but did you feel like there was a lot of time? Like I felt like the first game was kind of like 4 hours ish was a chapter in a sense.
I feel like they seem to maybe a bit shorter, and I guess with Alan Wake 2 as well. Like since you have 2 characters and they swap between them at different points in time, I think that makes the breaks a little more clear, perhaps. Since you're like not just going from one location to the next, you're kind of zipping back and forth between these 2 characters. So I think it maybe feels a bit more broken up. But yeah, once again, Alan Wake 2, I played it in like high school and I haven't ever revisited it. So I'm very fuzzy on the originals. That's why I'm glad that you were checking it out.
Yeah, so and that's somehow a game because I feel like it's the same thing where it's like I feel like in a film sense it's comparable to Blade Runner where the first film was like really well regarded and not a massive hit. I feel like Alan Wake like it was like a hit, but I don't think it was also like a huge like, hot cake seller, right? Even with Alan Wake 2, I think it was like last year they still report like they hadn't made a profit on, but it has like such
Right.
critical acclaim, right? So but somehow I'd never been spoiled on it. Like I didn't know it was about his wife going missing, and I love like okay, you start and you go you're on some sort of vacation because he has writer's block and he's gonna write. You go to this island, and then the chapter the wife goes missing, and then when they find you, this is where I love. It's just like, oh yeah, that cabin you went to, the little island thing, that doesn't even exist. That's not even there. So right away, it's like,
Right.
okay, we're into for some really wild stuff. I kind of figured that because I've seen Alan Wake 2 stuff. I feel like I'm not spoiled, but more knowing of stuff in Alan Wake 2 than the first one. But then I was like, okay, we're very heady. I love the way that the game has like you are obviously Alan Wake, but it has this narration throughout. I love the finding the chapters, and it's stuff like you'll be like, oh, things were going well, and then the bulldozer came in, but that won't happen for a few hours later. Like you start to find chapters and pages that
Yeah,
are
little
yeah,
foreshadow.
yeah, so it's so cool. I love all the light mechanics, and I love that each chapter you kind of get something new, like whether it's flashlight, mega flashlight, like ultra flashlight, like shotgun, pop shotgun. And I like there's certain times where they all come together. You do have the classic, like every chapter for some reason, Alan Wake like falls down and loses all his stuff, right? So you're ever
Yeah.
that's the tough thing. Like I felt like near the end, not so much, but the chapters like 1 to 3, I was consuming like batteries, ammo. Like I was making sure I had so much as possible, and then okay, it goes away. So then near the end, like I'm just gonna start using this all. I would just not consuming, conserving it. But yeah, I had a great time with it. It's unfortunately he passed away recently, but there's David Lynch, who's a great director. There's a show called Twin Peaks. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but it's just known for like it's a lot of weird heady stuff, but it's just it has a lot of oddball, screwy characters. A lot of characters that
Hmm.
stand out and like are memorable. And even if they're in it just for a scene or two, you think about that moment. And that's what I loved about this, where Alan Wake and his wife, and there's a couple other people that are, I'd say just normal, but everybody else has something off about them or something weird. I loved. I'm not sure. Maybe it happened in Alan Wake 2. Oh gosh, there's a TV show. I can't remember what it is.
Oh, it's like the Twilight Zone kind of thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was fantastic. I watched every single one of those. I had such a good time. Some were like, "Oh, that's really good." Some were like, "Oh, that felt pointless." But I loved like it. Just felt like such a well thought out world. Like it to me was. I was mad at myself. I had not played it sooner because it just was like the base game by itself is fun. It's just like a survival. Make sure you got enough batteries. I like the. It's a very simple game. Bad guy pops up, shine a light on them, shoot them.
Hmm.
That's it. And they do get new enemies as far as like trucks and stuff start to come alive. And I love the fourth wall breaking where they'll talk about like that'll happen, and then he'll talk about well Stephen King had Christine and all these other vehicles and stuff. And from a story point of view, I love that there's like three angles where either it's all happening, you're crazy, or it's just like a story come to life that's like really happening, or there's like some of it's like maybe you could be like within a story, and like each chapter they kind of like play up multiple avenues, so you really don't know until I'd say at the end they make it pretty clear. I am very curious what they do with Alan Wake 2 because I feel like Alan Wake 1 they show okay this is the path you're on and this is the end of the story, where 2 it's like okay that's kind of revealed. But no, I absolutely love the game, and I actually really like because that's what I would do every night. I'd be like, I'm gonna get to the chapter, and then when that happened, that's when I'd be done. So it was always like a really good stopping point for me, and I could really plan out like, okay, this takes 3 to 4 hours, depending on some situations. There's some that are like harder levels or areas, but no, I absolutely loved everything about this game. It was such a good time.
Yeah, I a few questions for you because I'm
Mhm.
just so happy that you have loved this game. One thing that I love about this series and something that I didn't really appreciate back when I played this game back in high school, but I can kind of appreciate now is that Alan Wake is a writer, and right, the whole story is about that. And as you're talking about, there's like things that get written in or out of the world, and you're finding
Yeah.
these manuscripts and whatnot. But I love that like he is supposed to be kind of a bad writer, and it's like interesting from thinking about that of like them doing good writing to write a character who is a bad writer. And I'm curious
Yeah.
for you as someone who has written scripts and written all sorts of stuff, how do you feel like about that? And like especially once again, since I'm very foggy on Alan Wake 1, did that kind of come through in the same way, or is that more something that you think the sequel is going to do?
It comes through a little bit, I'd say, at the beginning. I think once you get to chapter 4, that stuff's pretty much gone because you're really you're like going in caves. You're going like you're in a mental, like they do the full, which is it's funny because this game came out before we had reviewed Moon Knight. There's that episode where Moon Knight ends up in the asylum and they're all like, oh, none of this happened. You see like all the
Right.
things that could have been. And there's an episode in the game that is like that. And I was like, man, did these writers of the comic book play on Lake? Because I always thought, oh, that was a Moon Knight thing. Now when I watch or play this, I'm like, oh man, I wonder if any of these people played this game. I was like, oh, that'd be a great idea for a story. So it lessens as the story goes on, as it gets more adventurous, obviously. But I think at the beginning they kind of talk about like how schlocky it is, and even they have times
Mm-hmm.
where you see him in interviews, he comes off as very like pompous and like I know people might say like, oh, that's a lot of writers or actors or whatnot, but in a way where it's like, oh, this stuff isn't maybe as good as you're saying. But um I like that kind of how even with when you find the little pages, it feels like he's a little full of himself. But I
Yeah.
love the actor's voice act. Like he does such a good job when he's narrating. Like I walked through the woods and I couldn't my cold clammy thoughts. Like I
Yeah.
really love his voice. I don't know what else he's done. I want to get that guy in like movies too, like Pixar stuff. Like really liked Alan Wake's voice. But and it's funny because I looked up because I know they're connected. I looked up should I play Control before Alan Wake 2, and people said, oh, there's some stuff in there, but nothing like huge you need to know about, so I still want to play 2. But that was one of the most popular Reddit threads, was like, is Alan Wake a bad writer? And there's like I went down the wormhole a little bit of people like making examples and stuff. So yeah, that was that was a fun journey to go down with especially at the beginning. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I also, I'm very excited for you to get to the sequel, because like the Twin Peaks things, like there's even more of that, those like very direct comparisons, even though I still have not seen Twin Peaks, but just like afterwards hearing like, oh, this diner is like the Twin Peaks
the diner is for sure Twin Peaks
yeah
diner.
like that comes
even
back, and there's certain characters. Yeah, that's cool.
Just like stuff like you have the old, like that's why I love, you have these guys that are first they're just old geezer rock and roll people in a band, and then when you meet them in the asylum, they think they're like Thor and some other, like they think they're like gods and stuff. So it's like that, and that's what I love. It's a full immersion of the world, and things come back. That's what I love. Like even the tiniest things in the game come back later on, and you feel, and that's why, again, that's why for me I'm trying to play games all continuously, because that's a game where, let's say even I'm enjoying it, I play it and maybe take a month or break, and you just don't, you lose some of that. So that's why I'm like, okay, when I start a game, I'm making it in a time where I can just power through it. And, you know, not in the sense of like reviews where I had to be like, okay, Last of Us 2, I'm like powering through it like a nice rate though, where it's like, okay, I just want to be able to remember and recall things. So
yeah. And then another one, like my favorite part about Alan Wake 2 is just the use of mixed media, where obviously it is a video game and there's video game graphics, but then there are like live action sequences, there are the TV shows that are kind of contextualized within the world, but then some of that's live action. They have like music videos and stuff like that. So yeah, like I didn't really remember any of that from the first game, other than obviously like the YouTube series, which was live action leading into it. But are the shows in the game like live action in the first game?
Live action.
Okay, I totally forgot about that.
Even like in the last chapter, one of those interviews that's talking about where he's like on a Tonight Show sort of sense. It's the Alan Wake actor, a host, and it's the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy that did make the game. I know he's more prevalent in the second one.
Sam Lake, yeah.
But like in the first game, he's just like, you know, on a Tonight Show when there'd be the first guest and the second guest, and the old school, they used to sit on the couch with you. Sam Lake's just like just beside him, just like listen. Right. He says nothing, does nothing, but now playing this, like knowing, it's like, oh, that's a really fun Easter egg there. So yeah, all that stuff in Real World is all live action, and it's interesting. I can see why some people might be put off by it. I feel like it's similar like when we got Across the Spider-Verse and you had like a live action Donald Glover. It is like a weird, I just feel like it's like those like images where it's like what am I doing right now? What is the eyes thing? It's always like squint. So that's what it is. Okay. It's like squint and you'll see this image, and that's how I feel sometimes. It's weird seeing like you're playing as Alan Wake, the video game character. Everything's video game, but then you have this TV that is like real people. It's like offsetting, not in a bad way, but it's an odd sight to see. So, but yeah, lots of that stuff in there.
Yeah, that's so fun to hear. I really am so foggy on that thing. I think it's because like when I played that game back in the day, I mean, there was that hook initially, that YouTube series that got me into it, but I think I more enjoyed it as like, this is a scary game that's like fun to play as like a horror experience, and that was a series I hadn't really played back in the day, and it was terrifying for me, but I also played it like only at night with the headphones on really loud in a scary room.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad you did that. And then it's funny, like it's kind of like flipped with Alan Wake 2, where there was some moments that were scary for sure. There's a lot more like jump scares in the second, where there is a lot of jump. I can't say more because I don't remember much of the first game. But I hated
light on them. Yeah, like they have them, but it's not over.
Not as overt.
So, yeah.
But I going into the second one, like I just kind of hated the combat. I eventually just like turned it off, like turned the difficulty down to like nothing, and I just enjoyed the story and the world and the crazy characters and stuff. So it's funny that there was almost like a 180 flip, and I think it's just because like, whatever, 15 years have gone by since I've played that, and I'm like looking for different things in games. But yeah, since you were playing it in that kind of mode, was it like scary when you compare it to like other horror scary games you've played?
I don't think as like, I'd have to think, but like I feel like Outlast probably. I'm trying to think horror games I've played the past like 5 years. I would put Outlast over it. I'd put like the last Resident Evil over it. So I think it has its moments. I think I love the atmosphere it has, especially there are times where it's just like, you're in a bunch of bushes and things could pop up. I'd almost love it though. I'm not sure if the second game does this, but the first game, it'd be like you'll be walking and then it makes a sound effect where it's like, and it's like this. You start to slow, like it goes slow motion, and then they show the guys coming. I almost wish there was less of that, because it's good from a combat point of view because okay, flashlight, gun, ready to go, let's fight. But there is a point of view where it's like, oh, if I didn't know that coming, it might be harder, but it could be even scarier. So I'm not sure how
Yeah,
they
it
tackle
surprised you
that.
more. Right.
Yeah, I don't know how they
Right.
tackle that in the second game, but I think there's some moments, but I don't think it's as probably jump scary as what you're describing with Alan Wake 2. That sounds like it might be more on the scarier route, where this has a lot of because there's a lot of downtime, like when a car comes up the air and starts shaking. It's not the scariest, right? It's because I think there's a lot of cheese in it. Where I feel like
Yeah.
Alan Wake 2 sounds like it has that, but still has leans a bit more on the horror dramatic side. But I'm excited
Yeah.
to find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear you get to the second one because I think it's a great thing you waited. One, you saved yourself a lot of money, but also the
Yes.
game was very, very buggy when it first came out,
Oh, okay.
having crashes, like the opening
Like the
cutscene, the
original
audio
or the
bugged out.
remaster?
The Alan Wake 2 I'm talking about.
Oh, Alan Wake 2. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So that's why I'm
Jeez.
glad for you to get into the sequel and like you'll have presumably a much like smoother experience than
Yeah.
I had. That really detracted from a lot of like the opening and the literally the first cutscene and the last cutscene are like completely bugged for me. So that really like took the wind
Oh.
out of the sails of like my first impression of my final impression of it. And then through the middle wasn't too bad, but yeah, I think you'll have a much smoother ride. So that's good.
Especially with that game, you could be like, is this part of it or not? Sometimes,
Oh, absolutely. It's like, oh, is there supposed to be no audio here? Like, is the
Oh,
game
this is
supposed to
clever.
crash?
Yeah, I see what they're doing here. I see.
They're the kind of studio that would intentionally crash your game to make it feel like that was written into the story or something.
Yeah, like I feel like I tell this story every few years, and you might remember, but just for anyone that doesn't, I remember when my Emily and my sister we saw the first Conjuring theaters, and there was broken speakers. So when it popped up
Right.
like the studio, like who's there, it was like, but when you watch the Conjuring, it still starts with like louder, creepy music. But we're like, okay, I guess this is a choice. Like this is really loud, but I guess this is what they're going for. And then Jimmy Two Shoes walks out and is like, "Oh no, this is broken. We need to give you free popcorn." But it was like, is this what they're going for? I can't remember too. I knew somebody. Oh, I can't remember who it was, but Quiet Place 2 and that. Oh, I think maybe it was Hansi. I could be wrong. Hansi if it's you show, but I feel it's one of our female listeners or someone in our sphere. So they saw Quiet Place 2, and the first 20 minutes there was like no audio, but they thought it was like a choice. But then saying like, oh no, it's broken. But like, oh, I get what they're going. Like it's a quiet
That's
place, no
hilarious.
audio.
Yeah.
So it is funny when you have those movies that are a bit more artsy or have some of the styles when it never happens like with a Marvel movie, right? Where I know, oh, this isn't a take. Like it's like that where it's like Conjuring, like Alan Wake. If you were to tell me there could be a bug, there's multiple times that doesn't happen. Like honestly, the greatest example I think that's why it's a good one is, and you've played it at least, is in that first Arkham Asylum game when they do like a random bug and it makes it look like your game crash. Like that's why that was so good because it just happened in like a game you wouldn't think, right? Like a Batman game, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, do intentionally more of those, not unintentionally with the mistakes at the beginning. So
Yeah, I feel like Kojima does a good job of like
yes,
implementing fourth wall-y video gamey things to mess with the player experience, but definitely some more room for that if it's used tastefully.
Yeah.
Cool. What else have you been playing?
Yeah, and then this is not like so much because it'll be the next time too. It's a me playing, but it's a helping. So Dylan luckily while I was off reminded me, hey, if you got any of those Nintendo vouchers, use them because they're expiring. And I did because those were I just spammed them for a while, just like okay, get this and this and this. So it's like, okay, what do I want to get? And I talked about like even Luigi's Mansion 2, I want to, but I'm gonna go like wait eventually drop a little bit. Peach, I'd heard your guys' thoughts, and again, like I still look for more multiplayer games on Nintendo for me and the girls. So that's where finally just did the plunge, got Smash Ultimate, a game that, like I said, I'd never
Nice.
bought just because I felt like in the Gauntlet years, I was playing that thing weekly. Like it felt like I didn't own it, but it just pretty much felt like I owned it. And then, because anytime I come to Dylan's place, it's like, oh, I got this person to lock, this person, and then you try them for a bit, you play them. But this was more sort of like, okay, trying to get them into games that are bigger now, as far as just older, and because they've played Mario, and now they're starting to play Mario Party by themselves. Like before it was, hey,
Ooh,
give them a
okay.
controller. Your Peach, right? Like, quotations. But now they're trying. Me and Emily said on easy, right? So for us, even though I've never actually won a Mario Party as a family, we've played
Whoa.
3 times, and for some reason I got one time screwed over by a chance time and lost like
It'll
3
happen,
stars.
yeah.
It's not great. But so yeah, we did Smash because they're just all I've played so far by themselves is like Bluey the video game, or there's like one other one, but it's like that where it's like, okay, these are very kid games, they're very basic.
Paw
but it's
Patrol
like,
game maybe that was on Game Pass.
it was Paw Patrol. There's Paw Patrol Pup Adventure, and like there was a Mario Kart version of it. So yeah, that's the other one. So only that, and they played like we did the Ninja Turtles games together, but that's
Oh,
still pretty
nice.
easy too, right? Like you just sit side scroll and hit buttons. I need Emily because like at the time we played it, not the best. Them let me die a lot, but I digress. So yeah, we did Smash, and I was curious because I didn't like. So my two oldest daughters, 7 and 5, they're the ones that play it. Ellie, who's 3, is in the stage where she gets a controller that is, dead, not a real controller.
Yeah.
But I was curious because I'm trying to think when the 64 came on that version, but you just don't remember that, right? You just remember, hey, I was a kid that's played this game, but I didn't remember. Oh, I was specifically 8 and 1/2. Is this? It just came into my life. So I'm like, I think they're ready for this, but I wasn't sure, especially with Logan, who's only 5. I'm like, I think they're ready enough. So let's test this out. So this is what we did. So we bought it. We would do always, they've done a few solo matches, but usually it's like the 3-way, which that's why I love Smash Ultimate and the new games where you can do like the multiple teams and everything like that. So yeah, we always do, it's
Yep.
like me, Gwen, and Logan. And then if Ellie's around, we put in a CPU. Right now, they're playing the CPUs at a level of 3. That seems to be
Ooh,
like
okay.
the right amount. Did a 4 once, and they kind of got a little bopped. So 3 is like that's their right level where it's like okay, we can do this. But yeah, it was honestly. So we played it, boot up, and then I said this in the Discord, but it was one of the greatest nights of my life because they just absolutely loved it. We try to play once a week, if not every 2 weeks, and the gimmick of unlocking characters, I just forget like how hype that is as a kid
Yeah.
to like
It's great.
new full player, because even if it's like they don't know shit about Marth, but it's still like, oh, there's a new character and this and then there's that hype of, and it's always me playing. They've never done that, but they want to unlock, especially when I kind of forgot this, like the opening game, you don't have Peach. So Ellie the whole time is like, oh,
Right.
when's Peach? When's Peach? So when we got Peach, that was like a big moment. And the first night we legitimately played, it was, I don't know, 6-7 hours. Like we had a huge, it went on for a long time, and it was just fantastic to see them sitting there playing it. And yeah, they, for the most part, we are playing with weapons because a little more height with kids right now. I did explain
Oh
to them
yeah.
why some people don't play with weapons and stuff, but they've gone the hierarchy of, hey, when the trophy or a Pokeball drops, you go for that right away. The ultimate, go for that right away. I've taught them all that stuff. They've learned now to throw away weapons because now I could see them before hype of getting weapons. So like, this is annoying. Like, I don't want this weapon anymore. Like, how do I get rid of it? So, but it was tons of fun to know they've picked it up pretty well. Logan's danger is the corner. She even if she's not playing as Little Mac, she's very like she gets that corner. That's been the hardest thing, is the mastering of like the special tag B. I don't know what they're called, but like the B button. That's been the like
Okay.
doing the combo of like not just hitting that, but hitting that to the left, to the right, like hitting it up to
Like
say,
specifically the recovery moves to get
yes,
back. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the toughest thing I'd found.
I guess
so
you could
far
just
when
pick
teaching them.
stages that don't have a ledge.
We usually do, but now
Yeah.
they've been last week when they played, they've been
Want to get a
testing the
little more
water.
adventurous. Okay, nice. Yeah.
Because like that's the thing where it's like you can do the stages, but like all the platforms look pretty boring, right? Like it's just a platform and then the background of whatever it is. When they see like the racetrack, like Gwen wanted to, she picked the Mario Kart circuit when I'm like, you guys are gonna get roasted on here, and she's like, no, I want to try, and they lost. Like they just like the CPUs destroy them because there's many times, and that's the great thing of the game is because with the twins, anymore I need to help, I can just be out this round, and I set it to a CPU to help them out because I always like give them one person to be with there, and they can still do it. Like Gwen and Logan did her first 1v1 last week, and Gwen's done a couple
Ooh.
of them. She wants to do them
Okay.
on her own. So, but so they've been starting to do the bigger stages that have those falls just because like they look so cool. You go over them like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. So I think that is like it's harder, but it will also teach them sooner. Like, hey, you do have to rely more on recovery or getting up. And it was interesting because the first night I think they're level 1 and level 2. The first night they never lost. I wanted them to lose, but they never lost because like, oh, I need to teach them like they gotta know what it's like. And now we went up to 3, and that's way more stage dependent, item dependent, but also fighting. And it's Gwen's main, I'd say, is Kirby. That's her kind of go-to.
Very good. Yeah.
And Logan's kind of all over the place. I respected Gwen too. At one night she did this thing where she just started at Mario and just played everybody. She's like, I'm gonna try every single
I
character.
love that.
Yeah, and
Love
just go through
that.
the whole way.
Nice.
Yeah. And Logan, I'd say, definitely goes more towards like the bigger characters, like the Donkey Kong, the King
Okay.
Dededes, the Bowsers. That's what she's liking right now. They were a fan of Sonic, but also Sonic 3 just came out, so I feel like there's some bias there.
Yeah.
Like I just felt, oh, we love Sonic, but and it's been fun for me because anytime I played Smash, like recently, has always been the streamer competitively.
You're playing
so
to
now
win. Yeah.
it played to win. Yeah, so now I'm like, I've played with Sonic a bunch. I'm like, man, I actually really like Sonic. Where before I would never dare to play Sonic in the Smash thing. So now next time we go around, it's like, okay, I have a few more people I want to try out. Like same thing like Incineroar. There's a few other people, but
Right.
no,
The
it's
wrestler.
been
Yeah.
it's been fantastic. It's definitely been a great highlight, and I'll be disappointed once we have unlocked them all. But it's been a really good time. And yeah, that first time when we played, it was just like just hours and hours of fun. And that's where it's fun seeing them kind of, you're seeing myself like relive those moments. But lots of times it was like me alone, like in my room, like I unlocked this person. There's no hype, like that's why it was hype when we did, the night when you got the first time, because it's fun
Yeah.
as a unit doing that stuff, right?
They were
And
hard in Ultimate too. Like they really.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like if you're playing against like lower level CPUs. If they.
No, they boost up. They boost
They
up.
still
'Cause,
go
like,
hard, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
because I felt like the first few were not. I don't know if it's with each person, but I felt like the first few it was very much like drop down, couple moves, beat them easily. But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there was somebody that I thought was going to be an easy opponent, and they like I won't say they creamed me because it was close.
I
but
definitely lost a few when the game
I've
first
lost a
came out,
few,
which I was
yeah.
very surprised about. Yeah.
And it's tough too. I feel like lots of times when they're playing, that's when I'm sitting out. So they've picked the CPUs and they've picked characters that are not maybe my forte. So it's like for me, I can only do so much with Peach. I'm not a Peach guy, so it's Peach, and it's like, oh, I gotta fight Snake. It's like this isn't going well for me, So just try to do my best to get them on the side and just push them out. But yeah, so that's why I still do them, because they're not. They would kill Gwen and Logan. They would just destroy them and stuff. So, but no, it's been a great time, and I'm very happy they responded to it well. So, because I wasn't sure, and either way, if they didn't, then I was gonna play it and they would watch. But even before I bought it, I showed them like some gameplay and showed them some people. I said like, okay, this is the type of game. This is what it's like. And I think at first it looked like it was going to be a lot, because it is like a big stage, lots of characters, right? I think they were a little overwhelmed, but now like literally they could just fire up the Switch and go without me, other than like some menu setup. We do 5 stocks just because like want them to go a little bit longer, no time limits. And then right now all weapons, all bananas. I'm a weapons guy. I understand why we don't use weapons, but I love and it can help turn the tide, or teaches them that hey, you gotta watch out for some of these CPUs and they can just destroy you very quickly. So no, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very jealous of that you have just a squad of Smash players in your house.
Yes.
That's amazing.
We did
I guess
last week for
you
the
didn't.
first time, them versus me, and it was
okay.
one time they beat me again as Lil Mac,
Ooh.
falling off some stages. I didn't know it was a moving stage. One of those.
Oh
where,
yeah, those are
and I
rough.
was Little
Yeah.
Mac, so it was not going well for me. But it's also 3 versus 1, and they're Gwen and Logan and one CPU on 3, so it's a lot. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm guessing you didn't scoop up the DLC characters yet, right?
Not yet. I'm gonna buy Banjo next time we play, just because I kind of
Okay.
forgotten yet. And then there's a couple. I might get the Piranha Plant. And Cloud, is he a DLC one?
No, but Sephiroth is.
Okay.
If you want the other Final Fantasy guy, which I don't know if you would.
I think I'm okay with that. And then is Sora's a DLC, right, from Kingdom
Yeah.
Hearts? Yeah. So I think Plant, Banjo, and Sora are the ones that I will be purchasing. Banjo for sure. I should have gotten it before now, but I think I'm just gonna unlock all the characters first and then do that after the fact. So
Yeah, I'm just looking at the roster right now to see what other characters you might be. I guess like if you guys are playing Minecraft now, maybe you could pick up the Minecraft characters. Steve's in there.
oh, he's a one you gotta buy though?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, we'll talk about it next time on, but yeah, because Gwen is starting to dabble the toes in the Minecraft, which I'm scared about with the movie coming out, that I feel like I'm going to be roped into that, but no.
You have to watch that every week. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, though. Steve actually would probably be a hype one to buy, so I probably will get that then.
At least even just the map is great to have. I don't
Yes,
really
for
like the
sure.
character a whole lot, but I love just playing on that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's great to hear. I'm excited to hear you keep playing more of that. Do you think you'll ever invest time in the single player? Like when you do have just time on your own when the girls have gone to sleep, do you think you'll play any of that single player mode stuff?
I feel like I have to ask, what is a single player mode again? Because I remember obviously like with like the last one had the great like space embassy or whatever it is, right? What's it called?
Subspace, yeah, yeah.
Subspace. Yeah, that is like an all time like so fantastic. What is the sole player with this one? Because it's been so long.
Yeah, I mean there is the classic stuff of like classic mode, all-star mode, and home run contest, all that random
Yeah.
stuff that you can always expect. And then there's it's called the World of Light is what they call it. And there isn't really cutscenes. I think there's maybe a couple cutscenes that pop in there, although most of those were like things you would see in trailers anyway. But essentially it's like a giant world map. It looks a little similar to like the board game mode that they had,
I
although it's like
remember.
a way
Okay.
bigger map,
It's
and you can
different,
kind of
okay.
cruise around different directions. It's a good way to unlock characters if you're not just playing battles over and over again. It's huge though; it's really expansive. There are some really fun like boss fights and things you'll do in there, but most of it is still just like there's no like platforming stages like Subspace had. It is just regular battles with like modified things and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then there's like it's like rather than trophies, they have like stickers. I forget what they're called exactly, like just
Yeah.
different characters. And then there's like outside of the World of Light mode, you can go in and there's like a challenge board of all these different characters.
Okay.
So it's like it'll take a character, modify them a little bit to make them feel like there's like a Sonic one that makes it like kind of like what Shadow would be like if he was in the game, and then you can unlock Shadow as like a sticker thing, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
probably
okay.
will.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not amazing, but I definitely played through all of it. It was still fun to go through.
I would love them like if they were like, hey, we're not making another Smash game, but we are just gonna do like a Subspace type of game. Like I would love that. Like if it was like an offshoot of Smash, because that was fantastic. And what was the melee mode? It had something similar, right? Not as
I
deep
guess
as
Melee had
Subspace, but-
adventure mode, is what they called it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even
so you
that,
go through
like-
like the Mushroom Kingdom level, the like Hyrule
Yes.
maze,
I
yeah, all that
loved
stuff.
that. I spent
It was
so many
fun,
hours
yeah.
in there. Yeah, because it was like that was like it. You got the stages, but that was like seeing Captain Falcon in like a Zelda world. That was so cool, like crossover stuff. So I would love it if they're like, hey, we're not gonna do Smash again for a little bit. We're just gonna port Ultimate, but we're gonna do this type of game. And
Yeah.
are you imagining that's what's gonna happen? They're not gonna make another Smash. Like do you think the Switch 2 era will get a Smash, or they'll just do Ultimate?
I mean, first of all, this is a topic I definitely want to do as like a full episode, just
Right, maybe
talking
we can
like what
save
could.
it, yeah.
Yeah, but I do think you will get a Smash on the next Switch. Is it
Really?
the exact same team that makes it? Not sure. Is it
Yeah.
just like an Ultimate version of Ultimate where they bundle all the characters and then add a few more even? Maybe they do that. But I think it's just one of those series that for how well it consistently sells. And the
Yes.
DLC, I'm sure they made a killing on just DLC alone. That probably made more than a lot of their other first-party games, just selling freaking Steve and stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
there's no world where they don't make it happen. And if Sakurai doesn't want to do it, he wants to take a break. I think they might get someone else to try it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And even just like I don't think Nintendo cares this much about that, but if anyone does, and they feel like they might be a bit more business oriented right now, the
Oh, yeah,
hype
definitely.
of like who the next fighter is, like reaction videos.
And I mean
all
that's
that
a
stuff, like,
huge
that's
way that
huge.
advertises their
Yes.
other characters, right? It's like I'm sure
100%.
a lot more people got interested in ARMS after Min Min was added into Smash,
well-
and there's probably bigger examples of that too. So
Well, for example, like I messaged you and we didn't do it because like you made some good points, but the kids liked the Splatoon area and the character, and I was like, oh yeah, well it's this type of game. But then when you said like there's no couch co, I'm like, well that's dead right away because that's like
Right,
that's just
yeah.
what we would do, right? And I guess we could get it and do one all, and maybe we'll down the line. But it's still that was like, oh that could have been a fun experience for us all. But you're right where that propels people to be like, oh what is this franchise? What is that? And especially like I said, you can say it for that cast, but now that we're in an era where Xbox is kind of just willing to like play with a bunch of other people and license their stuff out, it's like, man, they're like we're seeing Master Chief 100% in the next Smash.
yeah, I mean
think it's
Banjo
all
was
locked.
technically is owned by Xbox, and they
Yes,
allowed
right.
it. So is Steve. So there
Yeah.
are already those connections happening there. And then obviously Sony has like, well, I guess Square Enix owns Cloud and stuff.
They
but
do,
there's
yeah.
a couple
But
connection points. So.
I think we're getting those Xbox icons next go around. Like
I think
Marcus
Master
Phoenix,
Chief should have. Okay, I don't need Marcus Phoenix, but yeah, Master Chief would be amazing.
If you can have like 18 people with swords, you can get Marcus Phoenix in there. You know, just even think for the Gears of War stage though, Dylan. The Gears of War stage, I bet that
Yeah.
could be lots of fun.
I mean,
Like,
I would take Halo. I would take Doom before. There's other.
Yeah.
If we're making an Xbox tier list, I would go a few characters before Marcus Phoenix. But I know there's a lot of
get Indy
deep
in there.
Gears fans.
No, I know Indy will be in there.
Okay, that would be interesting.
Indy, like last time we quit, because I know we'll talk about, like you said, cast one day. Indiana Jones, I think, would be a phenomenal Smash character.
I mean,
so the whip
what they should do
alone,
instead is
so
just
fun.
put like the Spelunky character in because he's like just a rip off of Indiana Jones. So
Yeah.
that would be the way to do it.
Do that.
I mean, back in the day in Melee, like there was definitely a lot of rumors, and there's like Sakurai has since confirmed that they considered like James Bond because
I
of
know.
GoldenEye, right? And so like they
so
considered
bummed.
it, and they never have gone down that route, and I don't
Yeah.
think they will at this point, unless
No.
maybe Sakurai leaves. Who knows? Like the next director, what they'll want to do with it, but yeah, I think there's some characters that could fit in there.
Yeah, we should definitely get
Even
that
just like
cast in
Spider-Man.
the
Make an
books.
exception for Spider-Man. I know they've said before it's like has to originate in video games, but like no, let's make an exception and put Spider-Man.
They've said
in there.
that rule has to originate in video games, so I guess that.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Sakurai has said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that'd be fun to talk about. But yeah, no, it's been like I said, not a big surprise for me. Smash, like that's like I agree. I understand why you and other people got Melee up in the number 1 spot or like even top 10. For me, I got Ultimate just because. Even before I used to have Smash Melee in my top 10, but it's like it's like a tie. So just because Ultimate's just like it is like it's crazy that game exists and how great it is and everything. It's
Yeah.
just like it is the ultimate game. So yeah,
I mean,
what
yeah,
did.
even though Melee, I'm a diehard fan because of the mechanics there. Like Ultimate is still like top 15 all-time game for me. Like I
Yeah.
love it so much, and I still play it frequently. So it's great. My last thought is just like. I'm so not that your children are experiments, but I'm just like thinking like 10, 15 years from now, the fact that they're starting with this game that has 80
Yeah. Oh, I know.
characters compared to like us back in the day who had 8, to start with, and then 4 more unlocks in that original game. Just like, man, that is wild. The expectations that like young gamers might have for certain series now that they're already certain, like if that's the first one they're playing, like that is insane to just think about. It's inconceivable. Just that many characters at your disposal.
Oh, it is all that stuff. It's just like what we talk about with like because we're doing the Harry Potter rewatches, and then we're gonna go on the Star Wars and do some Marvel stuff. It's just like they could bang out the Infinity Saga in a couple weeks, or that was 10 years. That was 10 years of our life. Endgame was such an event, but to them now it's just like Endgame's like it's another movie. It's like, oh, that's a chapter there. Same thing Harry Potter. It's like they watch one and then part 2 is right there. So it's interesting because even how much it's changed is my dad, he started me on the very first Mario game. That was the first game I ever played. He started me there, and I was like, oh, should I have gone that route? But no, it was already just they do even with like movies that like when you talk about different generations, they just respond better to the graphics the way they are, right? Like just even when we talk about there's certain Disney movies they just don't care for just because like it just looks old like that. Like to them, it's like when they see this type of animation, like that's what they're used to. It's kind of like people in our generation that might be like, oh, like a black and white movie, like that happens. So it's funny to see like anytime you try to pitch like a Disney hand drawn one, it's like there's only a few, but most of them like no, and that's all we end up back to like 2006 and on because it's like, oh well. That's old. That's old now. That's the same thing. I wonder if I would start them on Mario, if they would have been like, oh, like I've seen the games you play are around. Like this isn't the same. Where Mario, I think, was still comparable when I was like 10 to what was coming out now. Even though like the Xbox was, I was like, oh, I can see the leap. But now the leap it's massive. So
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you've been gaming since the 90s, but I'm curious how your thoughts would have changed how you play Alan Wake the original rather than just the remaster. Like maybe there's just like subtle differences or things they enhanced or whatever. But yeah, that's it definitely just like a lot of people are sick of remasters or want people to just make new games, but like there's definitely justification for certain remaster. We don't need a Horizon. Okay, I'll stand by that. We didn't need a Horizon Zero Dawn
don't need
remaster.
Horizon. Other than sales, we don't need Last of Us as well either. Like the fact that they pump, like it's we gotta get this out. It's like the game just came out. I get it. There's a show, very popular. You want to sell copies, but it's just like what is there to really remaster at this point?
I will say I was at a game store today and they had Last of Us like Part 1, the remaster, next to Part 2, and those box arts look so great next to each other. And like the original Last of Us box art, it doesn't mesh with the second one, but now they're like conjoined, so like they looked great on a shelf. So I mean
awesome.
that's the one benefit. Okay, let's take our first ad break. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. Did you have any other things you wanted to shout out, or should I go into my game?
Yeah, no, I'll save it for the next time because I only talked about this a little bit on gosh, what was in the video game draft where the only game next March is WWE season, and that's why I know I won't be
Right.
playing a new game at least until probably like May-ish because they got a lot of cool stuff on there. Me and the Gimmick Boys, look out! We're gonna at least do one stream of GMO. We're gonna try and play an entire
Nice.
season together. So
I
David
will
and
tune in
S-Bubs
for
are-
that for sure.
They're training up. So yeah, we got some fun stuff like S-Bubs. We're going to do all creator wrestlers where we create ourselves, and to decide the draft order instead of spinning a wheel, we'll have like
Battle it
simulate a
out.
match and stuff. So we got
Hell yeah.
we got some fun stuff. So if people like it, tune in, then maybe we might do something like record a bunch and do a series. But yeah, so that's why I'll save the other one because in the future it might just be like I'm still just playing WWE mode. So that's where, and especially because like soon we'll have some other bigger games come up, like hopefully Death Stranding and hopefully GTA. So, but yeah,
Hopefully.
and I'll save some other stuff. But I got some stuff on the backlog that I want to know. I still predict I'll be done Alan Wake though before like springish because Alan Wake 2, like I'm taking a little break, but I'm very interested to get there and Control.
I think it was like 10,
want
12
to-
hours. Pretty short game.
Yeah,
so.
the first one's like that too, and then Control I just haven't looked into as far as the sale. And then I guess the other only game
You might have Control on your PS Plus account. Check that because I know it was
Okay.
on there at some point. You might have it for free.
And then probably at some point I'll talk about The Quarry because that was a game that was on for like $5 during Boxing Day. And like Taylor said, it's a great thing to play with a couple. So me and Emily, when she's done her book, we're gonna dive into that.
Nice.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, I have one game to share with you. I'm very excited about this. You might have got a sneak peek of this. I know you listened to some episodes, dropping your February 1st notes in here. So you may have got slightly spoiled in this, but I shared my impressions for this game, but I have now rolled credits on Days Gone.
Oh yeah, okay. I was surprised when I saw a notification on my phone day and I saw Days Gone, and I was like, "Who is playing Days Gone right now?" Like, that's one. Well, depending on what your thoughts are, but yeah, how did that go?
Yeah, so I've now rolled credits on the game. It's weird that after you roll credits, there's like still more main quest stuff to do. So I don't know if you can like roll into New Game Plus right when you roll credits, or if you have to go and like do these additional like almost epilogue. They kind of just wrap up other storylines that aren't like the key crucial storyline. Kind of strange, but anyway, I've done that now, and then I've gone around and completed some other hordes and other random side quests and things like that. I think I mentioned this to you last year when we talked about Mad Max and how I love to have like a mindless open worldy game that I can just play with a podcast on or play while I'm watching YouTube and then like pay attention when I want to for like story bits and stuff. And Days Gone was a perfect version of that and has been for me for the last like month here. Especially, I've had a very weird, stressful, strange month, and so to just have a game that took very little like mental energy, but just enough that I'm still like actively playing it. It was kind of like the perfect mindless game for me in that point in time. And I think, as far as the game itself, like it is the most by the books thing. And it's only like 6 years old, but it's just like open world game with like map markers everywhere. You're following the yellow line to get to your next quest. You click the right stick in to like see footprints and follow like clues and stuff like that. Picking up resources. Enemies are just hiding behind chest high walls. You wait for their head to pop up and you shoot them in the head. Like it is the most bare bones like basic game, and in that way I feel like it is kind of like a middling experience for the most part because it just doesn't feel super unique or innovative. But I think the other thing that really surprised me about it, now I can say this for sure as I've now rolled credits on the game, is that I think the big distinction for me is that like Days Gone, it's not a zombie game. It is a post-apocalypse game. And so like the differentiator for me there is that like now that I've finished the main quest, I'd say maybe only like 20-25% of those main quests ever have you like interact with a zombie. Like there is just a ton of stuff outside of the actual zombie stuff, which
is
so
maybe
funny.
The E3, remember that first
Yes.
preview was just like the hordes, like you're
Yeah.
fighting so many.
That
zombies.
was the selling point of the game.
Yes.
And that stuff's great, and there is a lot of it in the game for sure, but a lot of that just ends up being like, if you want, you can go kill some hordes, but like we're not going to make you do it in the main story a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of other stuff on the side, like you're fighting other survivors. There's like this cult group that like worship the zombies, and there's like that faction that you're fighting. And then you're just like walking around talking to people, and then you're doing like these other stealth missions and stuff. And so there's just a lot of stuff outside of the zombie stuff. And I think that's where the game also kind of comes down a bit, is like the zombie stuff is super duper fun. It's the best part of the game. It was the most enjoyable stuff, like in terms of that selling point when I went to that freaking sawmill and did that horde. It was great. It was super fun. It maybe wasn't quite as cinematic as like the trailer at, the
Yeah.
PlayStation conference, but it was still super great. And then everything else is like not that good. It's like very like basic. It gets the job done. It's fun to shoot an enemy in the head, but like it gets kind of boring pretty quickly. And I think maybe the biggest detractor I have against this game is that the quest design is absolute garbage in this game. Like this game has fun mechanics. Like the game controls really well. The bike's really fun. Shooting your gun feels good. The zombies, like all that stuff feels really good. But like the quests around it, maybe it's the level design. Maybe it's just like the way these quests were set up. So many of them are so bland and so boring and so slow paced. There is a quest in this game where you have to, there's like, an evil government agency. They like fly in with their helicopter and then they're going to like go test these samples. And so you have to like sneak up to the base. If you get caught, it instantly fails the mission and you have to restart it from scratch. Even if you're in this mission for like 6 or 7 minutes, you get caught, you have to start again. You just have to sneak around. You're not allowed to attack anyone. You can't deal damage. So you just have to hide in like bushes, of course. You have to roll, don't get caught. And then you have to get close enough to like listen to the scientist as he's like, exposition, just dumping this random dialogue. Yeah. And then you have to like exfiltrate. And the twist is that there are like 6 or 7 of those missions in the game, and every time they absolutely suck, and I hated every single one of them.
Were any of them? Because I know you said like quests are those in the main story, or is it a mix of some main and some not main?
Those ones are all main story stuff, and then it gets a little funky because like how most games like the main quest markers, they're like yellow and the other ones are like gray or something like this. In this game, it's like a lot like there are some gray markers, some yellow markers, but it seems like there are some of these yellow ones which seem like main quest stuff that is maybe optional to some extent, and that's what I'm talking about. Like even once you rolled credits, you're still getting these like yellow marker main quest things. So it's like I don't know how many things you can skip. I think all those boring ass helicopter missions, I think all of those are mandatory because they kind of set up the story of the world, and like the main like one of the main antagonists, I guess, kind of characters is kind of connected with that. So yeah, it's like a weird mix of emotions for this game where I honestly did have a lot of fun just playing it because the game feels so great, and even doing like boring things that wasn't just like sneaking around, but like if I'm just doing any combat sequence, it was good enough. I was having fun. Yeah. And then it was just like with certain peaks where some quests are really well designed. They're just like very few and far between. And then like any of the zombie horde stuff is really, really good. Honestly, it gets a little tiring just because there's like a lot of it. It gets to a point later on in the game where like the hordes of zombies, when there's like a huge amount of them, like those are actually straight up on the map, and you can like click that on your map and get taken there, and then you'll go and like fight the horde. So you can actually, it's funny that they're just like kind of a marker on the map to find these specific hordes that are set up in like certain, maybe set up in this school, set up in this cave system, that kind of thing. And there's just a lot of it. And I think my plan was like, I really enjoy this stuff. I think I want to go through and knock all these off the map because they're fun. Then eventually got to a point where it's kind of just a bit of the same thing every time, and maybe that's a bit of a user error because I'm just using the same weapons. But it's like, wow, this massive gun is like really, really strong. I'm just gonna keep using it. Like if I use a crossbow, it'd be a lot harder, and like I could do that, I guess, but I'm just not. I just don't feel like there's a lot of incentive to really switch up your style. So maybe I'm just like playing it in a boring way. But I just, after doing a handful of them, I felt like, okay, I think I'm done with the game now. Like I feel like it's kind of shown me everything it had to show. It's played all its cards at this point.
I was going to ask you because I was just looking at the Metacritic, because it's like not a huge divide, but still a divide nonetheless. Like the critic score is a 71, so in the yellow, but then
that's actually a lot lower than I thought it would be.
Yeah, the user score is an 8.5 in the green.
Okay.
So it seems, and I kind of remember that narrative. I felt like early on where it came out because it was a part of that like the Dynasty era, right? Of like God of War, Last of Us 2, Spider-Man, and that was in there. And I think they even showed Ghost too, like around that same like the Showcase of Dreams or whatever. And I remember when that came out, it got like kind of those lower scores and it being kind of written off of like this is a failure. It's not a failure, but just like it's not meeting the mark of the other one. I even remember the creator kind of throwing some shade at PlayStation when Ghost of Tsushima hit a sales bench. He's like, we did that, like we had hit that same number, right? But we never got that like Days Gone massive success, blah blah blah. So it was like because it kind of got reviewed that way. But then I remember there was like a second wave of people that played it that enjoyed it a lot more than kind of that first buzz. And I guess, like I said, those still scores kind of show it where 71 to 85. So I feel like you're more like the 85 kind of camp, like, or 8.5, whatever, 7.1.
Man, that's interesting. Like I guess I don't really, even now that I'm doing review scores again, like I don't really do them for games still, and I don't know
Yeah.
why that is. Maybe it's because like games are longer. Maybe when I talk about them side quests, I'm not necessarily like done with it or something. So I think I would drop a number though, like a bit lower on this game, even if I enjoyed it, just because when I look at it critically, I do think it has like a ton of flaws. But like as a mindless game that I could play, like I got a lot of enjoyment out of this game because I played it while I had a podcast on that I enjoyed, So I'm like, there's another thing that I'm enjoying while I'm playing it. I think if I just played it and I was forced for 50 hours to only focus on this game and have no distractions and be a reviewer, I think I would have found it a lot more tedious and it would have driven me even more nuts. Because if I had to do this boring stealth mission, at least I could just like watch my YouTube video on the side, So it's like, I feel like it's a different experience.
Whereas a critic, you don't want to.
Yeah, it's just like, and this game is long. It's long as F.
Else.
And I remember one of the criticisms I heard when it first came out was people complaining that, wow, it takes so long to get to the horde stuff. And that is true. It takes a very long time before you encounter the first horde. You'll find zombies before that, but like at most maybe 8 or 9 or 10. But before you get to like that trailer moment horde where there's literally hundreds chasing you through like a set piece location, that takes a long time. And then by the end of the main quest, there's only two forced horde missions that you have to do, and the rest are just like random encounters that you would come across in the world, and there's a lot of them there, but there's only like 2 that are really on that scale, at least that I found. And then there's also like bonus mode stuff that I think they probably added post-launch that are like bonus missions and things like that, where it seems like they've kind of added some more through that.
Because I was gonna ask, because it's in the yellow Metacritic, and on Metacritic that's listed as mixed or average. Would you agree with that? Because then the green jumps up to generally favorable, and then universal acclaim.
Yeah, I do think that's very accurate. Yeah. I think that the more I think about it, the more I feel like that like a low 70 does kind of feel like the right spot for it. Even if like I got the enjoyment of like an 8 out of 10 out of it. I know that's like very confusing, but that's just, once again, number system for reviews is flawed, and that's why, because we're attributing like emotions to like a literal mathematical number. But
switch to the color, no longer give numbers. Just it's a red, it's a yellow, it's a green.
Yeah, this one's a little purple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the to talk about the strength, the biggest strength of the game is as I mentioned, fighting the hordes. That sawmill gas station, or the sawmill thing from the trailer, it was super fun. It was funny. I actually had like a friend over. He was hanging out at my house, and I was playing the game, and he's like, I kind of want to see what this game's about. And I'm like, I remember in the trailer there's a sawmill. Like, maybe I should go see if there's a horde there right now, because I'm like, I want to show him what this game's all about. And so there is a main quest that eventually takes you there, of course, but I just drove there on my own and went, and then there, in fact, was the full horde there. And it was funny, after I cleared it, when the main quest took me back there, it let me skip that. Like, it didn't respawn all the zombies, which I thought was going to happen. But it took me multiple tries, and it was super, super intense. And I think the reason for that is Deacon's run speed, or like when you're moving the stick fully forward, I guess your light jog sort of speed, like zombies will catch you. And unless you're going like off ledges, jumping over things, maybe you can outrun them that way. But like if you're not pressing the sprint button, then they will catch up to you, and you don't have a whole lot of stamina, or at least I didn't have a ton of stamina at that point. Stamina is a stat you're upgrading by doing all these other collectibles and whatnot. And so that makes all these horde encounters super intense, because you really do have to juke and dodge and climb buildings and jump off ledges or set up traps in advance. And I think a huge key for me was like, before I actually go to where the horde is hiding out in the barn, I gotta investigate this map. I gotta find where the explosive barrels are. I gotta find where like the ledges I can climb over. What are some shortcuts I can take in the Inception way? What are the shortcuts through the maze?
Gotta be Batman. You need prep time to take on these hordes,
Absolutely. And lay down some mines, other things like that. But man, like just doing multiple laps of that thing, going through different pathways, trying to get as many next to this propane tank as possible before I blow it up. Super duper fun. The first horde you have to fight is at like this big gas station set piece where there's multiple buildings, and that was just as good because there's, of course, it's a gas station with explosives everywhere. But that was the first one, and I was so weak at that point in the game relative to where I was fighting stuff later on in the game, where I just couldn't sprint for very long. And man, like it's so good. I think maybe the little bit downside here is like there isn't a whole lot of enemy variety with the zombies itself. Like when you're fighting a horde, it's just the one type, and they'll hunt you down. And then eventually there's like these screamer types, kind of like a witch from Left 4 Dead. There's a big tanky one, and there's one's kind of like an ape almost, and he'll like jump and he'll like retreat and then come back and like sneak up on you in weird ways. And that's kind of it. Like there's just like 4 types of zombies, and there's more enemy variety through like I mean, there's like zombie bears, I guess you could count that too, and like zombie wolves and whatnot.
I remember those.
But they're
from,
not they're not aligned with the horde. Like they'll fight each other if you just stand on the sidelines, which is fun to watch them do. So yeah, the horde stuff, it's great. It's super fun, but I think it makes the game hard to recommend because it's like you're waiting so long before you can even get to that stuff, before they even unlock. And then you're also even having to wait longer before you're having enough upgrades and you're strong enough to actually fight them in like a meaningful way. So it makes it a tricky game to recommend in that sense. And I don't think I would really recommend unless you like want that mindless open world experience, which is like,
or you really like that.
Those are fucking everywhere. You don't need this game for that, even though the zombie mechanics are cool.
You saying it's more apocalyptic that made me more interested, but it's the same time of like, how many other great games is there that like I want to do first? But that's always been on my list like one day, because I think I own it too. I think I got on like a PS like this.
It's on the PlayStation catalog, PS Plus thing if you have that subscribed right now.
So that's somewhere maybe one day, because it sounds there's some interesting things, but yeah. Well, I'm glad we finally got a review 6 years later for Days Gone. Out of those games we talked about, that's the only one that never got touched. So
I feel like I finally checked the PS4 box off completely. Two last things. One, okay, maybe my thing that I like even more than the hordes is, you know how like on a motorcycle you have like the gas tank is like kind of right in front of where you sit. It's like a big, tank right there. I don't know when they added this, presumably post-launch, but there is a Death Stranding cosmetic where you can have BB as the gas tank
that's
right
cool.
there.
That's really cool.
And it's also the best gas tank in the game. It has like the highest capacity. And I was so stoked. And yeah, it kind of like in the same way in Death Stranding, it kind of like will go opaque or not, so you can like see BB at certain points and other times you can't, and that added so much to my experience of just feeling connected with my bike, because now it's my baby as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you could say it's like it's before we're starting to use BBs before it all goes to shit, so
yeah, which it's also is funny because like I guess minor spoilers for like story lore stuff in the game is like something about the virus that affected people and may turn them into freakers, which is of course what they call zombies in this game. It just like human. I forget what it just pretty much completely annihilated children. Like there is no children in this game, which I think is more them like making a design decision and they like, okay, how can we weave that into the story? But it's funny then to have like a baby, and I guess the baby is protected because it's in the like canister or whatever. But there's like not a single child at a camp in this game, and like they're just completely wiped out except for BB. Like that is the one infant that is alive.
Did they make it
world.
That people can't reproduce either?
I feel like I'm sure that came up at some point, and I don't know. I've not seen a baby. I've not seen a kid. I don't know. I don't know if they can't reproduce. Maybe they're like, I don't know. I will say I did skip a lot of cutscenes in this game, so maybe it did come up, but I skipped a lot. And that's where I feel like it's hard for me to also criticize the story too much, because I really did not give it my all. As I said, I was paying attention to other things as I was playing. I was skipping a shit ton of cutscenes, but there were certain characters, I won't spoil who, that I was more invested in. I wanted to see what was going on there, and so I did pay attention to a lot of cutscenes. There is some really good story stuff in here, and I think as a post-apocalypse game, as I mentioned there, rather than it being a zombie game, it does some of that stuff really well, like these different factions, what they want out of the world, the things they're doing. I think it's, once again, this happens with like Uncharted. People always talk about like Nathan Drake's like a mass murderer. It like makes it hard to, and I felt that a lot with Deacon in this game, where he feels like a very sympathetic person. He's fighting for all these camps, but then I'm killing hundreds of survivors in a world that doesn't have a whole lot of people left. So I don't know, like you got to suspend your disbelief in that sort of sense. Yeah, I think there are some really good points of the story, especially maybe even like in the third act, so it takes a while to get to some of that stuff, but there are some good moments there, some good character stuff. Really great acting, I think, across the board, and I actually really grew to love Deacon as a character. I think he's a really great protagonist. He's not necessarily one I would normally think of, the biker gang kind of guy, but he has he's multifaceted, and I quite liked him, and yeah, once again, the performance I think is really great. So yeah, it's weird, as you mentioned earlier, like this game did sell really well, but obviously they didn't greenlight a sequel, and now that studio was working on a live service game that got canceled, and then they laid off people, which I predicted that was going to happen. Of course it was going to happen when they canceled these games. And so who knows what the future of Bend is even going to look like as a studio. Yeah. But, and I don't even know if I want to say that I'd be bummed that this game doesn't get a sequel, but I do think there is a lot of potential in terms of taking what you had here, refining it, adding some new mechanics, maybe even just in the Ghost of Tsushima way, like just change up the character, get a new protagonist and a new place, even though I do like Deacon, maybe have him in the world or something. But yeah, I do think I had a good time with this game, even if it's kind of objectively mid, I guess is my final thesis point I can say about it.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. There is Days Gone, and yeah, that's also what the last thing I like about it. Whenever you pause the game, it has like, it starts at like 790 days gone, and then as you like are going through it, 800 days gone, 830 days gone. Cool. I don't know how I guess it's just when you can sleep in the game, time passes for certain missions and whatnot, but that number just kind of slowly goes up. Okay, yeah, there you go. Those are the games we've been playing, and our last topic for the day. It's a bit of a mouthful, I guess, but WB Games as a publisher, a lot of turmoil going on lately. It's, I think it's been a multitude of things, but primarily it was last year with Suicide Squad and how this game just completely bombed. It was, not what people wanted. It took a really long time to come out, and then it just didn't have the audience. And now it's already like they announced that their final season, whatever. Maybe it already happened, but like the game, that's how little there you go. It's already done, even though it was supposed to be a game that was supposed to be a game as service, live for many, many years. And so I think that's kind of it's not really what kicked it off. There's been other issues with WB Games, but I think that's a big one. So along with that, actually, maybe we'll start there. So just looking specifically at Rocksteady. So obviously that Suicide Squad is done. I forget if there was layoffs. If there wasn't, I'm sure there will be. I would be surprised if there wasn't.
People leaving too, because I think it was
all the like big head directive or creative people I feel like left over the last few years, which is too bad. But we have now, there's a lot of these things are rumors. The only thing that's really confirmed is the Multiversus thing. Everything else is kind of just a scuttlebutt, to use a Travis word. But yeah, the scuttlebutt around town is now Rocksteady is officially back to making a single player Batman game, which, makes sense. Go back to the well, I guess. But what do you think about this?
Well, I think, I'm not right about everything, but every once in a while I'm right, and that's why I named my show Trash Told You. Because I remember, I think it's when we did Fandom. Yeah, Fandom during COVID, that's when they revealed Gotham Knights, and that's when they revealed Suicide Squad. And even Gotham Knights was not a live service game. You can check out me and Taylor did a review for it. It was like a fun, that was a game that we had tons of fun playing multiplayer, me and Taylor together, but it felt like a bare bones Arkham game, right? It felt like a lesser than, not a continuation or an add-on to. Just felt like, okay, this is a baby brother version of that. And Squad, I looked at that and I always was like, I don't know about this game. And then we learned more and more about it, and after Avengers, and it was weird because I felt like they did this thing where they're trying to. I guess they never said it wasn't live for service, but it felt like they were almost trying to walk it back. Because remember, it's like they were showing it off and then it was quiet for a long time. So we all kind of thought, oh, they're doing, which we'll talk about with Wonder Woman maybe, they're maybe taking a lot of that stuff out. But then when the game came out, it still had a lot of those aspects of the live service, the weekly updates, the grinding, everything like that. And I said back then, what's going to happen is these two games are going to flop, and then we're going to just go right back to Batman. And people might think I'm happy about that, but I'm really not, because one, the state of Rocksteady right now, I don't have faith we're going to get those Batman games. Even because Origins, it's funny. Origins, some people think is the best or the worst. I still think it's I'd still, on that green color thing, it'd be the great. It'd be, it'd be overall great. All those things. And that's where it's for me, I still own them on PS4 or whatnot. I get they got to sell them. But for me, I will buy it. And there's tons of routes with Batman you can go. But I don't have that itch that needs to be scratched. I got to me 4 very good to great games. I'm pretty happy. DC has a plethora of characters, but I just knew, what you said, is that's what all these businesses do. They're going to go back, what we tried didn't work. We're just going to go back to old faithful, right? We tell this all the time with movies and newscasts. Why are Chris Evans, Robert Downey coming back for Avengers? Well, we've had a bumpy couple of years, so let's just go back to what works. And there is, and again, you can't say it's wrong, right? Because people are going to go see that movie, and the Batman game will probably sell. They'll probably even be a sucker and maybe use the Arkham name, right? And do something with it just because that's their brand. But for me, it's just there's so many characters and so much in the world where it's take a risk. And it's tough because we've seen multiple comic book games fail. Guardians, Midnight Suns, so I get it, but even then it's the fact that nowhere in these rumors, there's not even a Superman game, a sniff of it. He is the second biggest character they have, and they're just now let's just not do anything. And obviously you can't time it with the movie, right? That movie's coming out, has lots of hype, it seems like that. But even then, it just to me feels like a no-brainer of, hey, I felt like what Sony did. We did a Spider-Man game. You know what we should do next? Who's probably the next biggest next to Spider-Man? I would say Wolverine, as far as like the mainstream audience. Well, let's do a Wolverine game. So it
Hmm.
feels like just even easy layups of, okay, we can't do Batman. What should we do? Well, we'll do Superman. I thought Wonder Woman was a great idea, but obviously we'll talk about that. So
Yeah.
it is disappointing. I'll be excited for a Batman game. I'll be excited to see what they do casting wise, because Mark Hamill's not playing the Joker ever again, and we lost Kevin Conroy, so they do kind of have to go on their own way. There, you don't have that kind of nostalgia, because there's tons of people that from the animated series when they announced those two got them like, oh, this is like a continuation of that show we love, and it's like 90 X-Men 97. It's a very classically, like, when you look at Batman, that's Batman. That's what people picture, right? So it's I'm disappointed to be right. Not that I thought Squad was way more of a disappointment than I even thought. Like, I thought it was going to be
Right.
disappointing, but it really tanked super hard. And I do own it now because it was a PS Plus
PS
game
Plus,
last
yeah,
month.
yeah.
Yeah, so I picked it up. I don't think I'll maybe ever. That's not one on the not one on the backlog list, but that's something where it's like, you know what? Again, I like to picture when I'm 55 and hopefully retired and I have nothing to do. It's like, oh, let's try that Suicide Squad game finally and see what it's like. But yeah, so nothing surprising here. Just to go back to Batman, very disappointing in my opinion. So
Yeah, I think, for this one for me, I'm not a big Rocksteady guy. I've played those first two Arkham games, and I haven't even beat City. Just played a few hours of it, so I don't have as much skin in the game, and so it doesn't affect me as much what they're necessarily doing here. But I think what this situation reminds me of is BioWare, where they make all sorts of games over the years, but like most prominently Mass Effect trilogy, which people love, even if 3 was maybe not quite as good as 2. And then like years go by, they make Mass Effect Andromeda. Big disappointment for people. Anthem, big disappointment for people. And then they're like, okay, we're going back to formula here. Let's make a Dragon Age, follow up to Dragon Age with Dragon Age Veilguard. Comes out last year. Once again, in the green. Seems like it's good to great game. People really enjoy it. But just the audience just wasn't really there for it. Whether it was the goodwill that was lost over all these years of like BioWare changing, huge creative people that we associate with those games leaving over time. And then also maybe just like the luster kind of wearing off a little bit. And so it worries me for Rocksteady for sure if they're going back to the well here. As you mentioned, I do think, those audiences are a bit different perhaps, but I thought Dragon Age should have been a freaking layup. And maybe also Dragon Age was affected by the fact that Baldur's Gate came out the year before, which is like just the best execution of that very idea. But as you mentioned, like there are other people making superhero games now. When like Arkham was doing it, they were kind of the top dog, but now you have Insomniac who's making like really kick-ass games, right? Even if maybe, I guess, I don't know. What do you think people consider to be like the stronger games overall in the just annals of overall video game icon status? Like, I think Spider-Man or Batman?
I think gameplay wise, it's identical. Like, I think you'd think the exact same. Like, I feel like you feel like Batman, you feel like Spider-Man. I think the Arkham stories have more depth to them. So I think that's where, even with Spider-Man 2, you can listen to Kirkland's eye review. They just still kind of miss the mark. They're not bad stories, but they just always feel like it's a little lacking or a little predictable. Where the Arkham games would take some chances. I think that was the biggest strike against Arkham Knight. That was the first game that actually didn't feel like it was its own story. It felt like it was, everyone said, "Hey, this is the reveal of the game," and we got the game. That was the reveal. Where Spider-Man, it's the same thing, right? Of like when we plugged it in, we all knew what was going to happen with Doc Ock. There was not a chance he was going to be a good guy, right? Same with Spider-Man 2. Like the second you play it, you know the beats of the Venom story. You know how exactly it's going to go. So I'd say that's the only thing with Night that gives it a little edge. Is just those first 3 games had a bit more unpredictability about them, which made it fun as as a player. But I think they're pretty equivalent. They are, like, for the Marvel, like if you have a coin, those are the 2 games that are on that coin. So
yeah. And I guess it's just like, man, it feels like scary how much pressure will be on Rocksteady now with this Batman game. One, I mean, like, if they're starting it now, that's going to take at least 5 years. So we're not going to see that until 2030, let's say generously.
Don't say those numbers.
Which is insane,
crazy,
right?
Because Arkham Knight came out in 2015. So it's going to be like 15 years later.
And that's what I was just going to say is like, man, look at some of these like other companies and like just the amount of pressure that lays on over time when you take such a large amount of time off. And especially like I think of Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 6 is going to have a lot of pressure on it, GTA. And I think those ones seem like they're going to be, they're going to be good to
They'll
go.
be fine, yeah.
But maybe they're on like a slightly different tier. But I still think the same thing stands where it's like, man, people have been waiting for a long time. Me as a big Elder Scrolls fan, I am so excited for that game. I have so much on the line. And if it underwhelms even like a bit, it's like, that's going to be at least a disappointment, which sucks to say.
Yes.
I feel like GTA maybe is a bit of a different story just because it's Rockstar there. But I think like Rocksteady, especially because how many people have left, and I can't say that I know who was the creative director of those original games, and if they didn't have people leaving in between them, but like those games came out every 2 or 3 years or something.
Yeah,
maybe
I think
4 years?
there's enough because I think the two guys that left, I don't know, like you said, like who's lead and whatnot, but I remember when they did leave, they were two guys that were heavily involved in the Arkham Knight series. Whichever way it was, like they had a lot of input there, and I can see why too. Like we've talked about those multiple studios. Obviously there's not like video game move. I think the closest that happens is like Jason Schreier and stuff, and maybe there is. Maybe there's a great YouTuber, whether you know one or our listeners, let me know. But I feel like in 5 to 10 years, someone's going to make a great semi-documentary about the lives of game service era, right? And like the massive pros and the massive cons. Like while I was off, we talked about it because what was the other game? There was one of the games that got shut down or canceled or something like that, right? Where it was another games for service.
Was it Multiversus, or is this a different thing you're thinking?
No, it
of?
was a different. It was a different one, and I think it was just like it was a list of like, oh, they were making Last of Us, but it didn't happen. They were making the Spider-Man one. That
Oh
didn't
yeah, all
happen.
the Sony stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
with Bend and
Oh, it was God of
Blue
War.
Point.
That's what it was.
God of
I
War.
think,
Yeah.
because I think we were talking about with Mike, because Mike's like, who in the right mind's making a God of War games for service, right? And that's where it's like, I think there's a fascinating documentary about all the behind. If you can get people to go on record, or some people go on record and talk about that. And same thing of like, you look at Rocksteady, they didn't do that much, right? It was just the Batman games. Even people had said like, why aren't they doing like Ninja Turtles or something else in Warner Brothers that they own, right? Some other IP that at that point, like, why don't you do something else? But it's like, okay, they're doing Batman and DC stuff. And it just feels like such a strange pivot. You have these guys that are heavily involved in making a huge single player game, story, looks great, like hits all the benchmarks you want, sells great, right? And it's just like, okay, now let's do a complete 180 and make these type of games. And you never know, because we've talked about this before, like look at Killzone to Horizon. It can work. You can have a studio that can do both, but it's not like a given. And especially too, like that at least feels like that was a pivot by like inspiration. I don't know if those guys woke up, maybe I'm wrong, and that could be the case, but I don't know if anyone woke up after Arkham Knight and said, I want to make this type of Suicide Squad game.
Oh
right?
yeah, it
always
was
felt like a
definitely
weird-
definitely the suits upstairs
Yes.
in the CEO boardroom who just like look at numbers all day and don't think about the artistry of game making,
Yes.
right? So
And that's
yeah.
why I think there's just all these studios and all these stories. I hope one day somebody out there makes some sort of documentary. Hey, maybe Geekverse in 10 years when we got GVS going strong, we'll make docs. Because I would love. I'm just fascinated by how that all works. Because it like obviously there's massive games that like it's huge for, right? Massive money maker. So you kind of get it, but you have to pick and choose. But I want to ask you before we moved any forward, if they were to sit you down, it's okay. We've heard Sidequest. You know, we know Dylan's not the biggest Batman fan, but want his opinion. What do you think's the better approach for them to be like, okay, we're gonna, because both have their merits, but we're gonna do an Arkham 5, like something in that world, or just completely new, fresh start type of Batman thing? Because clearly they're making a Batman game. So what do you think would be, and not even for yourself, just like what do you think's better for the market? Because like you said, you could go off the nostalgia, but if this game's not till like 2030, like that, are those people maybe not even nostalgic for Batman? Are they like moved on? Are they not playing those games? Like, what do you think's the best route? Because then you have the pitch too that Arkham is like very big franchise, and we've seen multiple games come back, like God of War, and it came back and it was a massive hit, right? So,
Man, this is why I have sympathy for some of these people at times where it's like that is an impossible decision because there are examples and counterexamples for either side of it. So I don't know. I like my gut would be to say, make it in the same Arkham verse because that would maybe buy you a little bit more favor right off the bat. You're gonna get the nostalgia hits and stuff like that. But I don't know. Would people be just as nostalgic as long as it just like is Rocksteady involved? But then you have GA level people who don't necessarily think about which studio makes a thing. They just only think about the game series and the name and whatnot. But I think what you would probably do, and I don't know if it would be just Rocksteady making this, would be a remaster collection. I'm sure they've done that before, but like another one. Yeah, you would do another one because once again, 2030. So we're talking years away, next console generation at this point. You'd have like a collection in there. It would get it top of mind again. People would be playing that stuff again, and then you hit them with the new game. Which once again, yeah, if Rocksteady's doing all of that, all these remasters, because what was the studio that made Origins? Right, it was a different one that made
Warner
that
Brothers
game, right?
Montreal or something like
Yeah,
that.
so I don't know
Yeah.
what the heck they're doing if they're still around even, but like you get another
They
studio like
made
that.
Knights, I'm pretty sure. The
Okay,
Arkham
yeah,
Knights
there you
one,
go.
yeah.
So maybe you get them or a studio like that to do the remaster part of it, and then you can like combo it, and hopefully you build up the hype that way. But yeah, once again, I think Dragon Age is a great example to look at a game like that kind of came back after all these years. And I don't know how connected it was to the previous games, but just audience wasn't there for it. And I do feel like Batman is an evergreen thing, but I also kind of thought Dragon Age was. So I don't know. It's just it's so hard.
And so much changes, right? Like that's where we talk about the games for service. Look how in a short time that changed, and like there's still successful versions of it, but it's like not everything. And it's more like okay, people find their camps and they stay in them. There's the odd one that come out, but it is interesting. And yeah, I really don't know what I would have them do. I wonder if there's like a middle ground. I know at one point another game that they threw out, they're working on like a Batman Beyond, where that's always a story of a younger character finding out Bruce Wayne was Batman when he's like in his 70s and he like trains him. And what I've always loved about Batman Beyond, it's Batman but in a Blade Runner setting. It's a cyberpunk
Ooh, nice.
world. And that's what I'd love. But at the same time, I would personally say, give me something new. I want that. But do people see that and go, oh, well, that's not the Batman game I wanted. I wanted more like the old school. So I feel like it's like a damn if you do, damn if you don't. And yeah, I'll be there. I'll be interested to see what they do. But my hope is they do something completely new, especially with the voice actors not coming back too. It's like, because then if it works in something completely new, then it's like, oh, we can go on for a while. Where now they do start to feel redundant. But if they do come out and say it's, oh, Arkham Castle, Arkham Beyond, I'm like, okay, I get it. You got to go for the name, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Insomniac, I mean, when they're one of the few like AAA studios that's able to put out games at like a frequent pace these days. But like a big part of that is like, okay, make Spider-Man, then you make Miles, and then you make Spider-Man 2, maybe this Venom game if it happens. Like all of those built off the same engine, using all the same assets and characters, and it can make things just a lot smoother, and it can reduce those development times because you're kind of reutilizing things and iterating, I guess. And yeah, maybe that's something that they could work towards with Batman. Whether that is because of the remasters of remaking those old games and then like building off that for the new game or whatnot, who knows? But yeah, it'll probably be a very long time before we see any of those things come to light. Let's take our last ad break, and we will be right back. Okay, we are back. Maybe this one will be a quick hit here, but a couple other things that came out. One is that there's a couple games that were maybe rumored or maybe considered or maybe pitched, but were eventually not greenlit by WB. That being a Constantine and a Flash game. It seems like the Flash one maybe was somehow connected, like they saw the movie come out, movie didn't perform super well, and then they canceled it. I don't know how much I believe that side of it, but also, can you fill me on Constantine as a character? And like, I don't know, do you wish either of these games did get greenlit and we got these?
So it's funny we talked about Alan Wake today, because when the Constantine news came out, I saw so many people in the game spheres be like, an Alan Wake Constantine game is like the way you could have gone. He is a supernatural. He is not the exact same as Doctor Strange, but it's that type of power set where it's wizardry. He's like a
reality shifter.
Yeah, he's dealing with the devil and demons and monsters and stuff like that. He's a monster hunter. So that's where I think, and you never know what the budget of these games is, right? Because could I say, hey, go make a massive budget Constantine game? No, but like even with Alan Wake, I know it's still a bigger game, but it's still not on the level of like a GTA or even probably what Batman. I would venture to guess like some of the Batman games probably cost more than Alan Wake, right? Just in general. So I just feel like if you could make something on the smaller side, I think there's some cool stuff. I don't know. I would have liked that. I don't know how that would have sold because he's a very lesser known DC character. He's been in a few things the past couple of years, and he has a movie. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. Keanu Reeves played him, so they have that.
Oh, interesting.
There's a Keanu Reeves movie. Maybe one day we'll retro it. But I think I could see a great pitch for that. The Flash thing, I'm with you where it's tough, where I think there's tons of fun stuff you could do. Anytime I'm one of the speedsters in like Lego games, it's always a great time. I always like, man, I'd love to do this in real life, play a character where you're on the ground and just moving around really fast. Like, I feel like there's I won't say easy way to do it, but I feel like where video games are now, there is a way to do that and make it enjoyable. I have a hard time believing about the movie thing, but to me, if it is true, that shows to me they're in really big trouble. Because I get the correlation of all the movie bombs, so maybe people want to play our game. Let's not do that character. But I think they're for the most part different audiences. The
Totally.
hardcore gaming audience is going to spend money versus the movie audience. I I don't think that's a one-to-one comparison. So I feel like if you made something out there that's a really great, quirky, fun-loving, like very, because I think like all the superhero games, we don't have a main speedster. So I feel like right away people are like, oh, like how does that work? And if it looks cool, that could be your gateway into like, oh, this is something a little more unique than Batman and Spider-Man, which have different movesets, but it is like a guy with you have the same counterattack. You have like press A and B to do a big combo finisher. Like I'd hope the Flash is maybe a little bit different because it's quite a different power set. Like even Batman and Spider-Man, they both got gadget reels, right? Like they have like a thing where you pull up. So if it is true, because maybe it is, these are the same guys that made them go from Arkham Knight to Suicide Squad. Maybe they did go, you know what? Yeah, that movie bombed. We can't do this anymore. But I think that would have been a fascinating game to see it play out. So, but yeah, it doesn't sound like that's happening. So
yeah, I mean, I think that we can look at Marvel as that as just a exact 1-to-1 of Marvel's Avengers and Ultimate Alliance 3 came out at like the ideal times. Like Ultimate Alliance 3 came out like a couple months after Endgame, I think, or Infinity War, one of the two, right? Yeah, 2019. So yeah, it's like, and you know, I think Ultimate Alliance 3 was a
July.
Yeah.
So 2 months after Endgame. And they had Thanos on the...
Like a month after Spider-Man, I think,
yeah,
right?
Thanos was the big character. You could play as Thanos. Like,
it's like that game was a success for what it was because I think it had a really low budget. And so it sold like a couple million copies, whatever. It was good to go. Marvel's Avengers, though, on the other side of the coin was considered a pretty big failure. But even though Ultimate Alliance was a success, it like... that should have sold 10 million copies based on how high the Marvel hype is. Exactly. And so I think it just kind of goes to show that people aren't necessarily like, I don't know, maybe Marvel's a different example just because they are churning out so much content that you don't feel like, oh man, I need a game to fill the void because you're getting shows and TV shows and movies like every year. So maybe you don't feel that drought as much. And DC, who knows? We'll see. Like, I guess the cadence is going to pick up here, but even then, like they've been doing stuff semi consistently for the last few years, right? So yeah, I don't know how real that would have been. I'm interested in this Constantine character, so it sounds like something I need to look into.
He's definitely more up your alley. I don't know if they're gonna. At one point, they announced they were doing like a legacy sequel with Reeves, but that was kind of around the time Gunn took over, so I don't know if that's a thing. But
I think I've like seen that movie like DVD case or something, but I never associate it with like DC. So
yeah, no, and it's a fun movie. It's a good time movie, and they also did a TV show as well back in the day. So yeah, there's lots of stuff with Constantine.
Another quick hit here is just some more talk that like Hogwarts Legacy 2 is definitely happening. Also something that like apparently they're maybe thinking of doing DLC for the first game, which to me that feels too far gone at this point.
Yeah, focus on the sequel now. Yeah.
But like that is. I think that's come up multiple times, and it's like that's the least surprising thing ever because that game was, I think, the second or third best-selling game of the year. It came out after like Call of Duty, right? Like it was huge. So yeah, no surprise, of course. That game's carrying WB on its back right now. I feel like
absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely happening. I'm really curious to see what they do there. Is it the same map? Do they go to a different? Like obviously, it's not Hogwarts. If you go to a different school, I don't think they would do that just because it's not a safe decision to make, and WB probably going to take it pretty safe right now. But yeah, I'm curious to see what's going on with that sequel.
Yeah, I think that's the toughest thing. It's very similar to because we had these conversations before with New York and Spider-Man, right? Of like you've already done New York, what do you do? And even with Spider-Man 2, they added like a little bit more of New York, but that for me is easier because you can always be like, we're gonna go to the Oscorp lair. We're gonna go like there's other locations that maybe you didn't go to in the first game that are in New York, right? Where Hogwarts, I feel like that's what they're gonna do. Is it's gonna be something like Chamber of Secrets, where it's like there's this part of the school you never knew about, or there's like because there's lots of mountains or like forest area. It's gonna be like there's a something out there, there's a cave out there you didn't know. Because I feel like the school you got to keep because people like that as the home base. Maybe you
add some new areas to it. Quidditch wasn't in there, so that's an easy freebie add on.
Maybe there's a couple rooms now that are open you can go to, but that's my prediction. They'll add some sort of Chamber Secrets-esque area that is part of the school, but it's never been there before, and it doesn't like break canon or anything. But that was kind of a no-brainer, and even then, like. Same thing to me, the correlation of the shows coming out, and again, I didn't like those reports of it being maybe tied to the show, but I still think it's smart to show's going to come out, hopefully be a big deal for them, and then the game. It's smart to have like that synergy going on. They don't have to be connected, but just finish an episode like, oh, I'd love to be a wizard right now. Boom, you know.
Yeah. And then I don't know why I went away from DC, but let's go right back to DC here because Wonder Woman. So, this is a weird one where the game was teased, announced, whatever you want to say. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago now, so it's been a bit. And I feel like last year in particular is when, at least for me, it was like, okay, we're going to get an announcement this year, whether it's like that big Summer Game Fest situation, and then that didn't happen. So like, okay, maybe Game Awards. Like I feel like predictions I was making was like, yeah, I think we're finally going to see Wonder Woman. We didn't, of course. And then there was this rumor, kind of some talk here that it seems as if potentially Wonder Woman last year, 2024, kind of restart development, being rebooted with a new creative director at the helm of it. And so that, if that is true and it is like a from scratch thing and they can't reuse a lot of it, that puts it another 5 years out at least. Once again, 2030 is when we'd be seeing that thing. If WB can survive that long without having to close the studio or without canceling this project, which that's worst case, but I mean, it's happening like every day right now in the game industry. So it wouldn't shock me if that did happen at this point, if this rumor is true. But man, if that is the case, I think that is such a huge disappointment and clearly just a huge mismanagement of whether it's the suits upstairs or like the heads of the studio there, or likely a little bit of both. Wow, what a massive fumble, and obviously not great timing considering all their other failures right now. And man, I hope this is not true, but it seems like it might be the case.
I think it is, because I can't remember what it was, because I still listen to Kind of Funny. I listen to Colin's show. So those are usually my two main ones other than Sidequest. So I remember around the time of some predictions cast, because it also spread around the internet too, and he had to address it. But whether it was like for Summer Games Fest or Game Awards, that Greg Miller had said like, oh, I'm hearing some stuff from people that like this game's not in good shape. And then like, I can't remember
I kind of forgot about that, but good point. I remember hearing
and I can't remember if it was before or after, but remember there was that rumor at one point that Wonder Woman had live game service elements in it.
Right.
And they came out and said like, no, that's not the deal. But they also did that with Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad did. And so that's where I think that it's kind of the, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. Like you have scuttlebutt from insiders, and then you have other people saying, hey, there's this going on. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there might have been a reboot, because same thing. If that game had any sense, and I it's like what Mike was saying with God of War. If you say, okay, we're not going to do Batman, and I say, do Superman, and you go, no, we're not doing that. To me, the third one would be, okay, do Wonder Woman. So that was a smart deal of, okay, for some reason, they're very scared to make a Superman game. The guy flies, shoots lasers, ice. Like, the guy has a moveset built for video games. It's not like, oh, how do we, like, okay, Spider-Man has his webs, but we need, like, all these different gadgets. Like, this guy, super speed, like, he has 5 powers already. Like, I can see the skill tree for, like, get colder breath, get, like, whatever it is, right? Like, so it's like, okay, you're not doing that. We're going to do Wonder Woman. This makes sense in the hierarchy of DC. Okay, and if this was any truth at any point, but we want it to be a live game service, like, how is that even like, what in the world would a Wonder Woman as a games of service work as? Like, why is that anywhere near it? And again, that's not confirmed, but it just feels like it's odd that was a rumor, and now, like, why would they be rebooting the game? Like, what is there to, like, how bad was it? And it sucks too, because this has that, what's the system? Is it just called the enemy system, or
Nemesis?
Nemesis, yeah, which is like fantastic in the Lord of the Rings games. It's one of the best things in gaming ever for me. I love it. So it's like, oh, as Wonder Woman, like, to me, it's just as bad as it sounds. If you're going to make a semi Shadow of War reskinned as Wonder Woman, it's like, that works. Like, it makes sense. She has some powers, a sword, and Nemesis system. Go. So that's where it's like, either way, it just feels like, I'm not saying it's easy. Making video games, movies, TV shows, not easy, but it just feels like there should have, like, I feel like the roadmap it would be easy to make the pitch of point A to point B of, this is what the Wonder Woman game should be. So this is why I'm confused of where it was like, what happened, what got us on this track to maybe it's rebooted, we're not going to see it for another 4 to 5 years. And yeah, same thing. It's like, I feel like that game's going to have hopefully a good showing, but I feel like it has like little hype now, because like it's announced and now it's just gone. It just reminds me of like the KOTOR remake. It's like, that's the thing. It's like, do we actually ever see this game now? It's like, because there's multiple games we've talked about. Warner Brothers was making a different Suicide Squad game at the time. There's 2 other Batman games that were in development that they scrapped. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that in 2 years we're talking about some Jason Schreier report where it's like, yeah, that Wonder Woman game's just dead and it never went anywhere. And it's just like, again, sunken
Yeah.
money, costs.
And
It's
I
gonna
mean, this
hurt the
stuff is coming
studio.
from Jason Schreier, which is usually the nail in the coffin of
Yeah.
a game. If he's reported on you, it's not looking good.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks because I am excited for this game, even if I'm not a big DC guy. I think it's just a great idea, and so it sucks that for whatever reason, as you mentioned, probably because the live service stuff is the reason why it would be getting rebooted, and now it's like a new creative director. Who knows what the heck is going to go on now? Because is it even the same people anymore that were like really working on this Lord of the Rings stuff? And I think once again, like I to some extent understand why companies would want to patent video game mechanics if they come up with something really cool and innovative and they want to make sure it's only for them. Sure, but it's generally something I just absolutely hate. I think it just flies in the face of like creativity and iteration and how much stuff did that Lord of the Rings game quote unquote rip off from other games, but it's not ripping it off because that's just video games. You know, you look at what other games did, you learn from their mistakes, you see what they did right, and you kind of implement some of that stuff. And so the fact that they patented the Nemesis system and now they just haven't released a game since they've done that, and no one else is allowed to use it unless they like obfuscated enough that it's not even the same thing anymore. And then this game, like, maybe it just never comes out, and then that patent, it just exists in some fucking drawer in WB somewhere gathering dust and like never gets used. I hate that. Like Nintendo has so many random patents on stuff. I hate it. I remember reading recently that there's a patent on video game loading screens having like a mini game in it. So that's why like that's just not a thing that happens because some studio or company, whatever, has patented that. And nowadays, like PS5 and stuff, there's not a lot of load times and whatnot, but it's like that's a great thing. A little mini game you can play while you're waiting for a game to load, but like no, you just can't do that because some company decided to patent that stuff. And I mean, also F the judges and courts who are like granting these patents. They're just really stupid stuff. So that's a whole nother soapbox, but I just really hate to see it for this Nemesis system because it is such a great idea, and it's like perfect for a freaking comic book character game that has a huge roster of interesting villains and whatnot. So the fact that we were like promised it and then it's just not happening and maybe will never happen, we will see. Just with how WB's going, it like seems likely that maybe just never ends up happening. So I don't know. I hope there is some good news that comes around this game, but I don't. Once again, probably gonna be years and years before we hear anything on it at this point, which is a huge bummer. So that sucks. Hate to see it.
Yeah, it's tough because like it's one of these situations now. If things do get better, it's not going to be for a long time. It'd be different if at least one of the two, whether it's Arkham Knights or Suicide Squad, hit, because you'd be like, hey, we really got hit hard with Suicide Squad, but at least this was a win, and we can kind of. There's not a bad taste, but it's like, and like I said, I think Arkham Knights was just like a fine, decent comic book game, but you're going to be away for a little bit with not much to show, not much like hype around you. You know, even if Wonder Woman would be working, it's like, okay, that can come out, then we could figure out Batman or anything else. So it's going to be a while, but maybe at the same time, that's the reverse. That maybe that's a good thing is you go away for a bit, you get missed, and then when you're back, and hopefully you come out strong. Like if you get Wonder Woman, next time you show it off like that, it's like it's coming out next year, this quarter. We're really happy with this. Here's the voice cast, all this stuff. It's not. I don't want another teaser in a couple of years. Be like, oh, Wonder Woman's still cooking, and then nothing. It's like no. Now you have to be quiet until you're ready to go. So
yeah. And we just talked about how like we don't feel like there is much of a correlation between there being big movies for these characters and then like the game is going to succeed or die because of the success or not success of the movie. But has James Gunn talked about like Wonder Woman, how that character is going to be interacted in the new DC universe?
All they've announced so far is there is a show called Paradise Lost, and it takes place on Themyscira. People kind of act like it might act as the origin to Wonder Woman, then that might transfer into the movies, but it's obviously not Gal. And yeah, we'll see. But I know James Gunn last week, I can't remember who it was, but because it's always a big deal on Threads, he started to follow some developer that has like some good praise to be like, oh, and because he's talked about before that he's wanted to do the thing where it's like, hey, if we make a Superman game, David Corn Sweat would voice that character, right? Not in like a movie adaptation game where it's those shitty games, like something where it's like, no, we want to make games set in this universe. So that's another kind of shoe that hasn't dropped yet. And same thing, it's not connected to the movies, but I do think it can indirectly help the studio if that franchise starts to pick up, you know, like success, there's a drive for it that can kind of raise all boats. So we'll see. But I just know James Gunn wants to make games in DC. Maybe he's just gonna make a crypto game though.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just gonna be some dog like hairstyler game, and start simple. Go for like a nice indie, man,
On the
do a couple of those.
iPhone exclusive.
Yeah, and they really should do a type of game like there's that John Wick game that you've played.
Yeah.
That's what that would be my other focus. Whether I'm James Gunn or that is put out something in the next, because let's say they don't put any DC games until Wonder Woman and Batman. Put out something in the next 2 to 3 years that's smaller, but like has a lot of love put into it, and it's like just a cool game. Something where hey, that's probably not going to get us a lot of sales. It's not going to be number 10 on the charts, but like something where I really like this. This was even so I could get some like nominations in the year, get some buzz. Like that's what I would do if I was them.
Small budget, small gain, but just like overall boosts the brand. Yeah.
Yes, just something. A couple games, because DC has literally thousands of characters that again they all own. Now Marvel does own their characters now, but like WB's always owned these characters. Like there's nothing holding them back from making like I said, a smaller constant game. Make it something like an Alan Wake style. Don't have to make a huge AAA game, but who knows?
Yeah. I think that'd be cool. And I think even what you mentioned there, I kind of forgot about that, of the idea of bringing in some of these live action actors, bring them in as like voice actors for some of these games. I think that maybe could have an effect that would boost some of the sales of these games in a way that we feel like there's such a big disconnection from the game, like the Marvel games and the Marvel movies. They just feel like they're in their own lanes completely, other than like, we're focusing on Thanos right now, that kind of stuff. But it's like not the same voice actors and stuff. So I think that would be interesting. I'd be curious to see how that, if that pays off in a big way. And if it doesn't, it's like probably not a huge gain. I mean, for some of them, for Corn Sweat, I don't know how much it costs to get him in like a game for a few lines of dialogue, but.
And again, Superman can come out July bomb, and then it's just a whole other conversation, right? The universe is dead, and there's no games. That's why I think they're smart that they haven't announced any games yet. Because I feel like more than TV show and movies, games is something where like, if you're gonna make a game set in the DCU, you got to be proven. Because imagine if you put a game into production, and it's like, people actually don't care about this universe, and then like, we have a Superman game and David Cornsweat's Superman, but everyone's like, we don't jive with that. So it's like, now the MCU could do something, right? You could put out some sort of, I've always said, like, why not make a T'Chaka game and be like, hey, we're gonna set this in the 60s to 40s of him, Black Panther. Like, I know they're supposedly making a Black Panther game. I think it's EA or somebody, right? Like, I can't remember. They announced that.
Oh, yeah, that does still exist out there. Yeah. I forget who's making it, but
and an
EA
Iron Man
is
game.
involved.
Don't forget, right? Because I saw this.
Yeah, don't forget.
It was a tweet. It was Wonder Woman, Wolverine, Iron Man, and Black Panther. And they were all announced within, like, a year and a half of each other. Like, these games are 3 to 4 year old announcements, and there's, like, nothing about them. But, like, MCU is what I'm saying. Is you could say, like, hey, set something in Wakanda 40 years ago, you're fine. Where DC, you do have to... It'd be weird if James Gunn and also in the slate we have Superman the game, and it's like, okay, so
yeah. And then the last bit of WB news here is that Multiversus has officially announced that with, I think it's season 5, this is their current season or upcoming season, it will be the final season of the game, and then they are turning the servers off. They're flicking the off switch on the servers there, and the game is going to die right then and there because it's a live service game, and they're selling it this way, and so you won't even be able to play online after that point. So
playing couch co-op's hard enough, as we found out on the
my god, it's fucking impossible. Hopefully, one of the things I was reading made it seem like maybe that'll be easier. Like maybe they would turn some of that off. But I have low expectations that if the game's dying and they're just looking to like get any last dollar they can, that they're going to try and add that feature to a game that's like gonna get delisted from the store at some point. Like they're not gonna care about that. That's is because it's a free game anyway. But this is really, really disappointing for me because I really like Multiversus. It's not as clean, smooth gameplay wise as Smash, of course. And honestly, I was playing a few months ago. I was playing the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, the sequel one, and like that game actually plays pretty well too. And I actually think it maybe plays a little bit better, like gameplay wise, than Multiversus. But I still have a lot of fun playing the game. And it's one that when it relaunched last year, I played a lot of it when it came back, and then I was even playing it just when new characters came out. I was jumping back in, checking some of them out. But man, I just hate how much this game has fumbled in terms of coming out in like a weird, ambiguous like alpha beta stage, and then launching, and then going offline for like 6 months, and then coming back, and then obviously that's just not a great way to market a game in general. But then for me, it's always gone back to I hated the live service setup for this game, and I would love to see an alternate dimension where if they had, I think it would have been a hard sell at 80, $90, but if like
Hmm.
Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, if they charged 30, $40 for it, I would have 100% bought the game if I just had access to all the characters and like, I can unlock, you can still have the characters unlockable, but not as much of a grind as it takes Nick right now to get the characters in there. And
Yeah.
I definitely would have been a purchaser. I wonder how many other people would have been, and if it would have been able to make the game. I mean, one, it would have just made it so you didn't have to support it with live service stuff to keep it going. It would have just been able to like just exist and stay alive. And eventually they'd turn the servers off, but maybe it could have got a few more years out of it. And I'm just bummed that we never got to the Lord of the Rings. We never got to the Harry Potter
Yeah.
stuff. Like we just they did way too much DC stuff in my opinion. Obviously they had rights to it. They
I
could go
agree.
buck
Yeah.
wild, but they did like I would have loved to see some of these other IPs that clearly it's not. I'm sure they would have loved to have Lord of the Rings in there. It was not the developer's fault, but I just hate the way this game was designed in the first place because the idea of a platform fighter with all these great characters crossover super fun, and I like the game, but yeah, this was not the right way to do it. And because of the way that they did it, I have not given a single dollar to it. So I'm part of the problem in a sense. But if they had just charged me 30, $40 right up front for everything, you would have had me. So
Yeah.
just a massive bummer, and it's too bad because I would have continued to keep playing this game, but now I just won't be able to in a couple months.
Yeah, no, I agree with your statement. They would have had my money as well. I remember when it first came out, you, me, and Emily were doing like some online match together. And we had a fun time, and
Hmm.
then I think that release was the start of it. Not saying it's not you can't recover, but it just felt like the hype got taken out, and it was really weird. Like, hey, it's done, and we don't know what's coming back. Not even like a queue on this. It was just it was gone, and they went like silent. It felt like it almost felt like the game wasn't coming back. So when it did, it was like, oh, I guess it's coming back. And I agree to the DC point where like you can't just rely on that. Obviously, it's one of their bigger brands, but I think for me, I'm just bummed that I really want because like you got Nickelodeon, you got that. Obviously, the PlayStation All Stars didn't work out.
Hmm.
I just am hoping in the what are we, 2025 now. I guess not in this decade, but in the next 10 years, I would just love someone to make a platformer fighter that is I can't say like as good as Smash, but something successful, not even the same amount, but just a competitor one way or another, right? Because I feel like these games come out and like they fun, they have a little audience, but nothing ever to the amount of like 1A and then 1B. I'm not saying
Hmm.
you're gonna beat Smash. It's been around since at 64. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be better, but I've just been wanting something where it's like options, right? Or like we've talked about, we've wanted have something successful so Disney might be like, let's do one where it's like we got Marvel, Star Wars, Disney characters, like,
Yeah.
and even this, like the roster is still pretty cool, like Beetlejuice, Agent Smith, Lost DC characters, Jason Voorhees, the Gremlins, people from Rick and Morty. You got some
Hmm.
Scooby Doo in there. Like, there's tons of different brands in here. I think I agree with you that we don't know. We don't have that answer, but I would love to see if you release the game with, let's say, 75% of that roster, and then you, as DLC, add some more. Because I feel like that keeps it more alive. Here's a Smash roster, here's people you're going to unlock, but then every few months we're releasing still new fighters for DLC, right? Versus here's your fighters, but then there's still more, like, kind of, quote unquote, main roster fighters to come, but that's going to be down the line. And you kind of forget about it, right? It's just one of these things that it's tough to do, especially like when you're Smash, you could do that because you're the big dog, right? But when you're trying to establish an audience, I feel like just go for everything. And I agree with you now. In retrospect, the 30-40 might have been a better way because, yeah, I would have bought it, and I feel like I would have been more inclined to keep my eyes on it if it had more of the fighters to go. And yeah, it was disappointing. Same thing. I'm not sure what happened legally there. Who knows what Lord of the Rings, because they have rights all over the place, right? But Harry Potter, I don't know how they never worked that out because they are Warner Brothers doing everything with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just disappointing. And yeah, it's little stuff like I was telling that to Emily today because I'm like, oh, remember that game? Because I was going over some of the topics. She asked what we were talking about today. And like, remember Multiverse? Like, oh, yeah, yeah. Like, I kind of wanted to explain it to her. And then I tried to explain to her like what happened on the stream when we tried to all play it together. And like, that's quality of life stuff
Yeah.
in 2024-5 that should not be happening. That's stuff that it should be easy. Like the fact that I can just hit Smash, get the controllers on, and the kids can go, great. But if I were to give
Hmm.
that to Gwen and Logan, be like, hey, get this going, like you can't, like, you got to log in, get a different account, like. What are you thinking? I know couch cope is not like, oh, the be all end all, but it's stuff like that, right? Because it's stuff like us, and I'm not saying we have a massive audience or anything, but it's like we would have played Multiverse probably for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, right? That's like free publicity of if someone watches and they see, oh, that's a cool game. Like, look, it's Bugs Bunny versus Iron Giant. But the second we fumble around with it for 15 minutes, go, this is a hassle, turn off, you lose that. And I feel like that happened with just like in general, it wasn't streaming or wasn't a big deal when it came back. So yeah, it's just more disappointing. And I'm wanting someone up there other than Nintendo to step up and make like some sort, and like I said, I'm looking at old powerful evil Disney is like, they're the ones. I feel like they're the ones you got to find somebody and be like, hey, here's our IP, use it all, make something go, but I just worry if developers soon look at this and just go like, yeah, that's just a Nintendo and Smash, like you can't recreate that. We tap, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky when you compare to Ultimate at this point, which is a game that's had 5 games lead up to it, right? Or 4 games to lead up to it. So now you just have all this years of iteration, design, and like creating a genre and then making the blueprint. So it's just it's hard to compare for sure. But yeah, I mean, quick rant as well. I was like playing Rocket League with Saris last night, and we play Rocket League often, and just jumping on Steam there, and I went to go play the game, and it was like, oh, you have to log into your Epic account, because at some point Epic bought Rocket League years ago, but I bought it on Steam way before that acquisition happened, so I never had to worry about it. But last night we were going to play, and it was just not letting me play until I linked to my account, and then I would click the button, and it would pull up the Epic thing, and it only allowed you to create an Epic account. I couldn't log in with the one I already had, and I had to fuck around with it for like a half an hour. It was the most annoying thing ever. It's one of my just biggest pet peeves of modern game, and I had a friend come over recently to play Halo. We just wanted to play some online, and you have to make a second account on the Xbox that has access to Xbox Live is like such a mess. And obviously that's just not, it's such a small part of the market these days, I guess, that they don't care at all. But it's like, man, does any of these developers care to make this like an enjoyable experience? It's just they don't care about the split screen couch co-op community anymore, which is just annoying. Very pet peeve status stuff there.
I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. This was a very juicy, heated episode, Travis. Really, really fun. Great to have you back here on Sidequest. Very excited. This next couple weeks here, I'm going to be a happy lad because I got Civilization coming out in 3 or 4 days. And then the week after that is Avowed. So you're going to get a couple juicy episodes here, me playing some fun new games. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.